My son-in-law slapped a brochure for a budget nursing home on my mahogany coffee table and told me it was time to downsize. He stood in the house I built with 40 years of sweat and grit and priced it at $2.4 million like he was selling a used car. He thought he was looking at a senile old man who had outlived his usefulness. He did not know that the property records he was waving around were already flagged by federal authorities. He did not know that the silence from his wife, my own daughter, was breaking my heart more than his greed ever could. Before I tell you how I sent him to prison, please like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone exactly who you are. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from. My name is Clinton Ross. I am 68 years old, and I am a retired structural engineer. For 40 years, I made a living by looking at things people take for granted. Bridges, highways, and skyscrapers, and finding the cracks before they turned into catastrophes. I learned early on that the most dangerous structural failures are the ones you cannot see from the outside. The rot that starts deep in the foundation and eats away at the integrity until the whole thing collapses under its own weight. I just never thought I would have to apply that same scrutiny to my own family. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of quiet, overcast day that usually brings me peace. I was standing in the center of my living room, a mug of black coffee in my hand, looking up at the crown molding. This house is a Victorian beauty that sits on a hill in a neighborhood where 40 years ago men with skin like mine were not welcome after dark. My late wife Lucille and I bought this place when it was falling apart. We poured every cent we had into restoring it. I reinforced the load-bearing beams myself. I sanded the red oak floors on my hands and knees until my knuckles bled. This house was not just wood and brick, it was a monument to our survival. It was the legacy I intended to leave to my daughter Jasmine. I was tracing a hairline fracture in the plaster near the window, making a mental note to fix it when the silence was shattered. The screech of tires on asphalt cut through the morning air like a scream. I looked out the window and saw a white BMW X5 jump the curb and park aggressively on my lawn, crushing the hydrangeas Lucille had planted the year before she died. The driver's door swung open and out stepped Liam Sterling, my son-in-law. He was a tall man, undeniably handsome in that polished country club way, but there was a softness to his hands that always bothered me. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, but it hung on him loosely as if he had lost weight recently. He looked frantic, his eyes darting around the street before he marched toward my front door. Trailing behind him was my daughter Jasmine. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her shoulders were hunched, her gaze fixed firmly on the pavement. She was wringing her hands, a nervous habit she had developed as a child when she was about to be scolded. And behind her was a woman I did not know, a woman in a bright red blazer with hair sprayed so stiff it probably would not move in a hurricane. She was carrying a leather portfolio and typing furiously on her phone. They did not knock. The front door flew open, banging against the stopper. Liam strode in as if he paid the mortgage, bringing a gust of cold air and the overpowering scent of expensive cologne mixed with nervous sweat. "Dad, good you are up," Liam said, not even looking at me. He gestured to the woman in red. "This is Brenda. She is the top realtor in the county. We do not have much time. Brenda has another showing at noon, so let us make this quick." I stood there, my coffee mug warm in my hand, watching them invade my sanctuary. Brenda the realtor did not even introduce herself. She kicked off her heels by the door and started walking around my living room, tapping on the walls with a long manicured fingernail. "Good bones," she muttered, her voice nasal and dismissive. "But this layout is ancient. We would need to knock down this wall here to open up the kitchen. The buyers from overseas love an open concept. It is good feng shui. And that fireplace needs to go. It dates the room." "Excuse me," I said, my voice low. I did not raise it. I learned a long time ago that true authority does not need to shout. "Who are you and why are you discussing demolishing my home?" Liam stepped between me and the realtor, blocking my view. He had a smile plastered on his face, but it did not reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, calculating, and desperate. "We are just getting a valuation," Dad, Liam said, waving a hand dismissively. "The market is at an all-time peak right now. Brenda says we could list this place for $2.4 million cash offers, no inspections. We could close in 2 weeks. $2.4 million, I repeated. I looked at Jasmine. She was standing by the door, refusing to make eye contact. She was picking at a loose thread on her sweater. "Jasmine, did you know about this?" Liam answered for her. "Of course she knows. We discussed it." Look, Dad, let us be realistic. This place is too much for you. It is 3 stories, 4,000 square feet. You are 68. What happens if you slip on those hardwood stairs? What happens if you have a stroke in the garden? You could be lying there for days. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a glossy brochure. He tossed it onto the coffee table. It slid across the mahogany surface and stopped right in front of me. The cover featured a generic photo of smiling elderly people playing chess in a sunlit room. The words Sunny Meadows Senior Living were printed in cheerful yellow font. "We found you a great spot," Liam continued, speaking faster now. "It is a serviced apartment, high-end, very quiet. It is out in the suburbs, so the air is fresh. You would have your own kitchenette, a nurse on call 24/7, and plenty of activities. Bingo nights, movie screenings. You would love it." I looked at the brochure. I knew Sunny Meadows. It was a budget facility on the edge of town known for understaffing and the smell of industrial cleaner masking the scent of decay. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. "You want to put me in a home?" I said, looking up from the brochure. "It is a community, Dad," Liam corrected me, his tone condescending. "And with the money from the house sale, you could pay for the best package they have. The rest, well, we would put it into the Sterling Family Trust. We would manage it for you, investing it so you never have to worry about a thing." I looked at the folder Brenda had placed on the table. It had the Sterling Family Trust logo on it. I knew that trust. I knew the Sterling family had lost their fortune 5 years ago in bad crypto investments and gambling debts, though they tried very hard to hide it. I knew Liam was drowning. I just did not realize he was planning to use me as his life raft. I walked over to the window and looked out at the hydrangeas Liam had crushed with his car. I remembered the day Lucille planted them. Her hands covered in dirt, her laugh ringing out when she wiped a smudge of soil on my nose. She had made me promise to keep this house in the family, to make sure it was a safe haven for Jasmine. "Jasmine," I said again, turning my back to the window, "I want to hear it from you. Is this what you want? To sell your mother's house to put me in Sunny Meadows?" Jasmine finally looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed with dark circles. She looked terrified. She opened her mouth to speak, but Liam cleared his throat loudly. It was a sharp warning sound. Jasmine flinched. "It is for the best, Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling so much I could barely hear her. Liam says the market might crash soon. If we do not sell now, we might lose value. And you really are getting older. We just want you to be safe." She was reciting a script. I could see it in the way her eyes darted to Liam for approval. She was not protecting me. She was protecting him. She had chosen her husband over her father, over her history, over the truth. That realization hurt more than any physical blow. I looked at Liam. He was checking his watch, looking bored. He thought he had already won. He thought I was just a hurdle to be cleared, a signature to be obtained. He saw a gray-haired man in a flannel shirt and work boots and assumed I was weak. He forgot that before I retired, I managed infrastructure projects worth billions of dollars. He forgot that I spent my life calculating stress loads and failure points. I walked over to the table and picked up the business card Brenda had left next to the brochure. I looked at it for a moment, reading the gold-embossed letters. Then slowly and deliberately, I tore it in half, then in half again. I let the pieces flutter down onto the nursing home brochure. Brenda gasped, clutching her pearls. "Well, I never," she huffed. "Get out," I said. My voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who knows exactly where he stands. Liam's smile vanished. "Dad, do not be difficult. We are trying to help you. Brenda drove all the way out here to—" "I said get out," I interrupted him, stepping closer. "I am not selling this house. I am not moving to Sunny Meadows. And if you ever drive across my lawn again, I will have your car towed and crushed." Liam's face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. He stepped forward, invading my personal space, trying to use his height to intimidate me. But I did not flinch. I stood my ground, my feet planted firmly on the oak floorboards I had restored with my own hands. "You are making a mistake, old man," Liam hissed, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper so the realtor wouldn't hear. "You are not capable of making these decisions anymore. You are confused. You are forgetting things. Jasmine and I, we are your next of kin. If you do not do this the easy way, we will do it the hard way." "What is the hard way, Liam?" I asked, meeting his gaze. "Monday," he said, straightening his jacket. "The moving truck comes on Monday. We have already booked it. We have power of attorney pending. By next week, you will be in that home whether you walk in or you are carried in. Enjoy your weekend, Dad. It is your last one here." He turned on his heel and marched out. Brenda scurried after him, shooting me a dirty look. Jasmine lingered for a second, her hand reaching out as if she wanted to touch my arm, but then she pulled back, turned, and ran after her husband. The door slammed shut, leaving me in the silence of my big empty house. I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of their engine fading down the street. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from fear, but from a cold, sharp anger. Liam thought he had checkmated me. He thought he could bully me out of my own life. He had no idea what he had just started. He wanted a war fine. I would give him a war. But I would not fight with shouting and threats. I would fight with the tools I knew best: investigation, documentation, and absolute ruthless precision. I walked to the kitchen and picked up my phone. I did not call the police. Not yet. Instead, I opened my contact list and scrolled down to a name I hadn't called in years but kept for emergencies. I pressed dial. "Sarah," I said, when the voice on the other end answered. "It is Clinton Ross. I need you to clear your schedule. We have a situation, and it is not civil. It is criminal." I hung up the phone and looked around my kitchen. This was my home, and nobody was taking it from me. Monday was coming, but Liam Sterling wasn't going to like what he found when he got here. Sleep did not come that night. It hovered on the edges of my consciousness, taunting me. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liam's smug face and the terror in Jasmine's eyes. The silence of my big empty house, usually my comfort, felt oppressive. It felt like the calm before a structural collapse. I tossed the duvet aside at 2 a.m. and swung my legs out of bed. My joints popped, a reminder of my age, but my mind was sharp. It was the same clarity I used to feel before a major inspection, the instinct that told me something under the surface was ready to give way. I went down to the garage. The air was cool and smelled of motor oil and sawdust, the scent of honest work. I walked past my new sedan to the back corner where I kept my old equipment in metal lockers. I ran my hand over the cold steel until I found the latch I was looking for. Inside was a heavy padded case that I had not opened in 15 years. I clicked the latches open. Inside lay a high-sensitivity acoustic vibration analyzer. To the untrained eye, it looked like a complex mess of wires and a directional microphone dish. To a structural engineer, it was a stethoscope for concrete and steel. We used it to detect microfractures in bridge pylons or to hear the groan of metal under too much stress long before the human ear could pick it up. But I learned a long time ago that it had other uses. I lifted the device, checking the battery contacts. It was heavy solid. It took me back to 1982. I was a young black man on a construction site in Boston, surrounded by white foremen who did not want me there. They smiled to my face, but I knew they were cutting corners using subpar rebar and mixing the concrete too thin. They thought I was just the diversity hire, the quiet guy who checked the boxes. But I learned to listen. I used this machine to listen to the building, but I also learned to point it at the construction trailer during lunch breaks. I heard them laughing about the kickbacks. I heard them planning to blame the new guy if the foundation cracked. That machine saved my career and saved hundreds of lives when I blew the whistle on the corrupt concrete pour. I learned then that survival depends on hearing what people say when they think they are in the dark. I packed the analyzer into the passenger seat of my 1998 Ford F-150. The truck was rusted around the wheel wells, but the engine purred like a kitten. It was invisible. Just another old work truck in a city full of them. I backed out of the driveway with the lights off, the gravel crunching softly under the tires. The drive to Jasmine's neighborhood took 20 minutes. She lived in a new development called The Heights. It was one of those places where every house looked exactly the same, soulless boxes made of cheap timber and stucco sold for $1 million a pop. It was a facade of wealth built on debt and leverage. I parked 2 blocks away from their house, tucking the truck between a dumpster and a construction fence. I had a clear line of sight to their living room window. The lights were still on. I could see shadows moving against the sheer curtains, the frantic pacing of a man, the slumped posture of a woman. I rolled the window down just an inch to feed the directional microphone through. I put on the heavy noise-canceling headphones. The world instantly changed. The distant hum of the highway became a roar. A dog barking 3 streets over sounded like it was in the back seat with me. I adjusted the frequency, dialing out the background noise, focusing the beam directly on the glass of Jasmine's window. The glass acted as a diaphragm, vibrating with the sound waves from inside the room. My analyzer converted those vibrations back into audio. At first, it was just static. Then I adjusted the gain, and the voices flooded into my ears, crystal clear and terrifying. "You are useless." That was Liam. His voice was a high-pitched shriek distorted by rage. I flinched. It sounded like he was standing right next to me. I watched the shadow of a man in the window throw something. Through the headphones, I heard the shatter of glass or ceramic against a wall. 2.4 million, Liam screamed. "That is the number, Jasmine. That is the only number that matters. Do you understand?" I heard a soft weeping sound. It was Jasmine. Her voice was muffled, probably because she had her face buried in her hands. "Liam, please," she sobbed. "We cannot do this. It is his home. He built it. He loves that house." I gripped the steering wheel. Hearing her defend me should have felt good, but her voice was weak. It was the voice of someone who had been beaten down for a long time. "I do not care what he loves," Liam roared. "I care about my fingers. I care about my kneecaps. Do you think these people are joking? Do you think this is a game?" "What people?" Liam. Jasmine cried. "You said it was just a bad investment. You said the market turned." Liam laughed. It was a manic, jagged sound that made my skin crawl. "The market," he mocked her. "There is no market, you stupid girl. It is not stocks. It is not crypto. It is the table." I was down. I tried to double down to win it back. I lost. Then I borrowed to cover the loss, and I lost that too. The silence that followed was heavy. I could hear Jasmine's sharp intake of breath. "Gambling," she whispered. "You promised me. You swore on our wedding day you stopped." "I did not stop," Liam hissed. "I just got better at hiding it until I wasn't. And now I owe $2.2 million. And the people I owe, they do not send collection letters. They send guys with hammers. They are Russian Jasmine. They gave me until the end of the month. 2.2 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. That was why the realtor priced my house at 2.4. He needed the cash to clear the debt and a little extra to run. He was not trying to help me downsize. He was liquidating my life to pay for his addiction. I adjusted the frequency again as the voices dropped lower. "We have to go to the police," Jasmine said. Her voice was shaking. "No police," Liam snapped. "If we go to the police, they kill me. And maybe they come for you too. The only way out is that money. Your father is sitting on a gold mine and he is too old to spend it. He is wasting it." "It is selfish, Jasmine. It is selfish of him to hoard that equity when his family is in danger." "He is not hoarding it," Jasmine argued, though her voice was wavering. "He lives there. It is his life." "He is an old man," Liam shouted. "He has lived his life. I have my whole life ahead of me. We have our lives ahead of us. Why should his comfort be more important than my survival?" I watched the shadows in the window merge. Liam grabbed Jasmine by the shoulders. I could hear the rustle of fabric through the headphones. "Listen to me," he said, his voice dropping to a deadly cold register. "We are selling that house. Monday, the movers come. We put them in Sunny Meadows. We get power of attorney. We sell the house fast, cash buyer. I already have a contact who can move the property quickly." But he said no. Jasmine whimpered. "He tore up the card. He kicked us out." "So what?" Liam spat. "He is confused. He is old. We tell everyone he is losing it. We tell the doctor he is forgetting things, leaving the stove on, getting aggressive. We get him declared incompetent. I already have a doctor lined up who will sign the papers for $5,000. Once we have the guardianship, his no does not matter." My blood ran cold in my veins. This was not just greed. This was a conspiracy. This was a calculated plan to strip me of my rights, my freedom, and my dignity. They were going to gaslight me, lock me away, and sell everything I worked for. "I cannot do that to him," Jasmine sobbed. "I cannot." Then the sound came. It was sharp, wet, and sickening, the sound of flesh striking flesh. I saw Jasmine's shadow recoil and fall back onto the sofa. I heard her cry out in pain. "You will do it," Liam snarled. "You will do it because you are my wife. You will do it because if you do not, I am a dead man. And if I go down, I am taking you with me. Do you understand?" I did not hear her answer. I only heard her weeping. "Answer me," Liam screamed. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." "I understand," good Liam said. His voice returned to that smooth, fake calm that he used in public. "Now clean up this mess. I am going out for a drink. I need to calm down." I watched the front door of their house open. Liam stepped out, adjusting his jacket. He looked like any other suburban husband going for a late-night stroll. He walked right past my truck so close I could have reached out and touched him. He was humming to himself. I sat there in the dark, the headphones still over my ears, listening to my daughter cry alone in her living room. I wanted to get out of the truck. I wanted to kick down her door and hold her. I wanted to find Liam and beat him within an inch of his life with a tire iron. But I was an engineer, and engineers do not act on impulse. We calculate, we plan, we mitigate risk. If I went in there now, it would be a domestic dispute. It would be my word against his. He would spin it. He would say I was the aggressor, the crazy old man attacking his son-in-law. He would use it to prove I was unstable. No. I needed more than this. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to see how deep the rot went. I heard Liam's voice echo in my mind again. The old man is selfish, his comfort versus my survival. He had declared war. He just did not know who he was fighting. He thought he was fighting a retiree. He did not know he was fighting a man who had survived race riots, union busting, and corrupt city councils. I took the headphones off and laid them gently on the passenger seat. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from a cold, hard rage that was settling in my gut. I started the truck. The engine rumbled to life. I drove home slowly, my mind racing. Liam needed $2.2 million. He had a doctor lined up to declare me incompetent. He had a buyer lined up for a quick cash sale. That meant he was desperate, and desperate men make mistakes. I pulled into my driveway and looked up at my house. It stood tall and proud against the night sky. They wanted to take this from me. They wanted to take my freedom. I went inside and went straight to my study. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a file I had started compiling years ago, just in case. It contained the deeds, the trust documents, and the contact information for the best shark of a lawyer in the state. Then I sat down and made a list. I needed to know exactly what Liam had done. I needed to know who this doctor was. I needed to know who the cash buyer was. And I needed to protect the title of my house before Monday morning. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my chair watching the sun come up, feeling the anger burn clean and hot. Liam Sterling had made a fatal error. He thought I was just an obstacle. He was about to find out that I was the demolition crew. When the clock struck 8 a.m., I stood up. I showered, shaved, and put on my work clothes. Not a suit. My work clothes. Heavy boots, canvas pants, and a flannel shirt, the uniform of a man who builds things. I walked out the door and got back into my truck. My first stop was not the police. It was the county recorder's office. I needed to see the paperwork. I needed to see if Liam had already tried to make a move. I drove into the city, my jaw set. The game had changed. It was no longer about selling a house. It was about survival. And I intended to survive. The morning sun was cold and sharp as I walked up the granite steps of the county recorder's office. It was 8:15 in the morning. The building was a fortress of limestone and bureaucracy designed to make you feel small. I had been here many times before in my career, filing permits, checking easements, ensuring the ground was solid before we poured a single drop of concrete. Back then I wore a hard hat and carried blueprints. Today I wore my flannel shirt, my canvas work pants, and my heavy boots. I looked like a man who was there to fix the plumbing, not a man who owned a $2 million asset. I pushed through the heavy revolving doors and stepped into the air-conditioned silence of the lobby. The smell was distinct. It was the smell of old paper dust and indifference. I took a ticket from the machine. Number 42. I was the only person in the waiting area. I sat on a wooden bench, my knees aching slightly from the damp chill outside. I watched the clerks behind the glass partition. They were moving with the slow, deliberate lethargy of people who get paid by the hour, regardless of how many tickets they clear. Number 42, a voice called out over the intercom. It sounded bored. I stood up and walked to window 3. The clerk was a young woman, maybe in her early 20s. She had long, acrylic nails that clicked against the counter, and she was chewing gum with a rhythmic wet sound. She did not look up when I approached. She was scrolling through something on her phone, hidden discreetly behind a stack of files. "Help you," she mumbled, her eyes still glued to the screen. "Good morning," I said, keeping my voice level. "I need to pull the property records for my home. I need to check the title status and any recent lien activity." She finally looked up. Her eyes swept over my flannel shirt, the sawdust on my shoulder, and my calloused hands. Her expression shifted from boredom to mild annoyance. She let out a short, sharp sigh as if my presence was a personal inconvenience. "Deliveries are around the back, sir," she said, pointing a long pink fingernail toward the side exit. "Or if you are looking for the maintenance supervisor, his office is in the basement." I did not move. I did not blink. I placed my hands on the counter, leaning in slightly. I am not here to fix the toilet, miss, and I am not delivering parcels. I am here to inspect the title on my property. My name is Clinton Ross. She raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. She popped her gum. Address? She demanded, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. I gave her the address. 1982 Highview Avenue. She typed it in her long nails clacking loudly against the keys. She typed slowly, agonizingly, so as if she were doing me a favor by expending the energy. She did not believe me. She thought I was wasting her time. She probably thought I was a tenant checking to see if my landlord was foreclosing, or maybe just a confused old man who had wandered into the wrong building. I watched her face. I learned a long time ago that you do not watch the screen. You watch the person reading the screen. Their eyes tell you everything you need to know before they say a word. She hit enter. She took a sip of her iced coffee, waiting for the database to load. I waited. The silence stretched. Then she stopped chewing her gum. Her eyes widened. She leaned closer to the monitor, squinting. Her hand froze halfway to her mouth with the straw. The boredom vanished from her face, replaced by a sudden sharp confusion. Then fear. She typed something else quickly this time. She hit enter again. She recoiled from the computer as if it had bitten her. "What is going on?" I asked. My voice was calm, but my pulse was hammering in my neck. She did not answer me. She stood up her chair, scraping loudly against the floor. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time, and there was panic in her eyes. "I need to get my manager," she stammered. Her voice was high and tight. Just wait here. Do not move." She practically ran to the back office. I stood alone at the window. I looked at the monitor she had left unattended. I could not see the details from this angle, but I could see the color. The entire screen was washing in a pulsing, angry red light. I knew that color. In the engineering world, red meant critical failure. It meant evacuate. It meant the bridge is coming down. In the world of property law, it meant something even worse. I stood there for 2 minutes. I could see heads popping up from the cubicles in the back. People were whispering, pointing. A security guard near the door straightened up his hand, drifting instinctively toward his belt. They were looking at me. Finally, a door opened in the back. A man walked out. He was in his 50s, wearing a cheap suit that was too tight around the middle. He looked tired and anxious. He walked straight to the window, the young clerk trailing nervously behind him. "Mr. Ross," the manager said. He did not smile. He looked at my work clothes, but unlike the clerk, he did not seem dismissive. He seemed wary. "I am Mr. Henderson, the senior recorder. Please come with me." He buzzed the door open. I walked through the gate, feeling the eyes of every employee on me. He led me into a small, glass-walled office and closed the blinds. He did not offer me a seat. He went behind his desk and turned his monitor so I could see it. "Mr. Ross, are you aware of the current status of your property title?" he asked. "I told you," I said. "I am here to check it. My son-in-law threatened to sell it. I want to make sure he cannot." Mr. Henderson let out a breath he seemed to have been holding. He tapped a key on his keyboard. "He cannot sell it, Mr. Ross." "Nobody can." He pointed to the screen. There, in bold, flashing red letters, was a notification that made my blood run cold. "Status locked. Federal flag. 18 U.S.C. Section 1344. I stared at the code. I am not a lawyer, but I know what federal flag means. It means the United States government has taken an interest in your assets. It means you are not just in a civil dispute. You are in a crime scene. "What is this?" I asked, my voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. "Mr." Henderson looked at me over the top of his glasses. "Section 1344 is bank fraud, Mr. Ross." "Bank fraud." Last Tuesday, Mr. Henderson said, checking a log on his screen. "An individual named Liam Sterling attempted to file a mortgage lien against your property. He was applying for an expedited hard money loan. $500,000. Cash out. $500,000. Liam wasn't just trying to sell the house. He was trying to strip the equity before the sale even went through. He was trying to bleed me dry. He presented a power of attorney document." Henderson continued. "It appeared to be notarized. It had your signature on it." I clenched my fists. "I never signed anything." "We know," Henderson said. "Or rather, the system knew." He clicked another tab. 10 years ago, Mr. Ross, when you paid off your mortgage, you filed a title lock affidavit. You set up a 2-step verification process for any liens or transfers. It requires biometric confirmation and a secondary password." I remembered. I had done it after hearing about a scam where thieves stole the deeds to elderly people's homes. I was paranoid back then. My wife used to tease me about it. She called me her security guard. Thank God for that paranoia. When Mr. Sterling tried to push the paperwork through without those verifications, the system flagged it as an unauthorized attempt, Henderson explained. But it did not just decline it. Because the loan application was submitted through a federally insured lender and the documents were proven to be forged, it triggered an automatic alert to the Department of Justice. He looked at me, his face grave. This isn't just a rejected application, Mr. Ross. The FBI has placed a hold on this property. They have flagged it as a potential asset in an active money laundering investigation. They suspect the lender Mr. Sterling was using is a front for illegal activity. I felt the room spin slightly. Money laundering. FBI. Liam was not just a gambler, he was not just a desperate man in debt, he was mixed up with people who triggered federal alarms. He was trying to use my house, my legacy, to wash dirty money for criminals. So the house is safe, I asked, trying to focus on the immediate problem. Henderson nodded. The house is safe in the sense that he cannot sell it. He cannot mortgage it. The title is frozen solid. But Mr. Ross, if this flag is here, it means they are watching. It means your son-in-law has done something very, very stupid and very dangerous. I looked at the red text on the screen. Locked. It was a shield, but it was also a target. Can I get a copy of this, I asked. A copy of the attempt, the timestamp, the name of the lender. Henderson hesitated. Technically, it is part of a federal file now, but since you are the owner. He printed a single sheet of paper. It had the transaction log. It showed Liam's name. It showed the date. It showed the amount, and it showed the rejection code. I took the paper. My hands were steady now. The shock had passed, replaced by a cold, mechanical clarity. This was the evidence I needed. This was the smoking gun. Liam had tried to steal $500,000 from me, and he had committed a federal felony to do it. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, I said. Mr. Ross, Henderson said as I turned to leave. Be careful. People who trigger these kinds of flags, they do not like loose ends. I walked out of the office. The clerk in the front row stared at me as I passed. She looked terrified. She probably thought I was a criminal mastermind. She had no idea I was the victim. I walked out into the sunlight. It felt too bright, too normal. I had a piece of paper in my pocket that could send my son-in-law to prison for 20 years. I got into my truck and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment staring at the paper. Liam had tried to bury me. He tried to put me in a home and sell my life for parts. But he had tripped a wire he did not even know existed. I took out my phone. I did not call Jasmine. I could not trust her. Not yet. She knew about the sale. Did she know about the loan? Did she know he was forging my signature? I pushed that thought away. It hurt too much. I dialed the number for Sarah Jenkins. Sarah was the toughest lawyer in the state. She had handled my contracts when I was consulting for the city. She terrified city councilmen and union bosses alike. She was expensive, ruthless, and exactly what I needed. Clinton? Her voice came through the speaker, crisp and sharp. I haven't heard from you since the bridge project. To what do I owe the pleasure? Sarah, I said, I need you to clear your schedule. I am booked until next month, Clinton. You know how it is. I have a title lock alert, Sarah. Federal flag. 18 USC 1344. My son-in-law tried to mortgage my house with a forged power of attorney, and the FBI is watching the property. There was a silence on the line, a long, heavy silence. I heard the sound of a chair swiveling. I heard the click of a pen. Be in my office in 20 minutes, Sarah said. Bring the paper. And Clinton, yes, do not go home. If he tried to pull 500 grand out and failed, he is desperate. And desperate men are dangerous. I hung up. I started the engine. I was not going home. Not yet. I had one more stop to make before I met Sarah. I needed to see just how deep this hole went. I put the truck in gear and pulled out into traffic. The red light of the recorder's screen was still burned into my retinas. Locked. Liam Sterling thought he was playing a game. He thought he was the smartest man in the room, but he had just walked into a trap that was set 10 years ago. And now, I was going to close the jaws. The law firm of Jenkins and Associates occupies the top 3 floors of the Skyline Tower downtown. It is a fortress of glass, steel, and polished marble designed to intimidate anyone who cannot afford $500 an hour. I walked into the lobby wearing my sawdust-covered flannel shirt and my heavy work boots. The sound of my heavy tread on the Italian marble floor drew immediate attention. A young man in a slim-fit suit looked up from his phone with a sneer. A woman with a Louis Vuitton bag stepped aside to avoid brushing against my canvas pants. They saw a laborer. They saw a man who probably fixed the HVAC or unclogged the executive toilets. They did not see the man whose structural patents helped pay for the foundation this building stood on. I approached the reception desk. The receptionist was a young woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a headset that looked like it cost more than my weekly grocery bill. She did not look up immediately. She finished typing a sentence, took a sip of water, and then finally deigned to acknowledge me. "Deliveries are through the service elevator on the north side," she said without making eye contact. "I am not a delivery man," I said. My voice was calm, the deep rumble of a man who does not need to shout to be heard. "I am here to see Sarah Jenkins." She finally looked up. Her eyes swept over my attire, lingering on the grease stain on my collar. A small, amused smile played on her lips. "Ms. Jenkins is a senior partner, sir. She is booked months in advance. If you have a maintenance request, I can direct you to the facilities manager." "Tell her Clinton Ross is here," I said. "Sir, I cannot just interrupt a senior partner for 'Tell her Clinton Ross is here,'" I repeated. I did not raise my voice, but I leaned forward slightly, placing my calloused hands on the pristine white counter. "Or I can call her personal cell phone and tell her you kept me waiting in the lobby like a package." The receptionist blinked. The confidence faltered in her eyes. She reached for the phone, dialing a number, hesitantly. She whispered something, listened, and then her face went pale. She hung up the phone as if it were hot. "Ms. Jenkins is coming out immediately, Mr. Ross. Can I get you some water? Coffee? Anything at all?" I ignored her. I turned toward the hallway just as the double glass doors swung open. Sarah Jenkins strode out. She was a force of nature in a tailored navy suit, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob. She stopped when she saw me. She did not look at my clothes. She looked at my face. She saw the tension in my jaw and the darkness in my eyes. "Clinton," she said. She walked right past the stunned receptionist and the man in the slim fit suit. She took my hand in both of hers. Her grip was firm. "Get in here." She led me back through the maze of offices. Junior associates and paralegals stopped their conversations as we passed. They knew Sarah Jenkins did not come out to the lobby for anyone. They looked at the old black man in work boots, walking beside the lioness of the firm, and I could see the wheels turning in their heads. Sarah ushered me into her corner office and closed the door. The room smelled of old books and expensive leather. She pointed to a chair. "Sit," she commanded. She went behind her massive oak desk and pulled a thick file folder from her briefcase. She did not waste time with pleasantries. That is why I liked her. "I made some calls, Clinton," she said. "I called in favors from the district attorney's office and a private investigator I use for high-stakes corporate espionage. What I found is ugly." "How ugly?" I asked. She opened the file and slid a stack of papers across the desk. "Liam Sterling is not just broke, Clinton. He is drowning the Sterling family fortune. It has been gone for 5 years. His father leveraged everything on bad commercial real estate deals in 2008 and never recovered. They have been living on credit and appearances ever since." I looked at the documents. Bank statements showing overdrafts, foreclosure notices on properties I thought they owned free and clear, credit card bills that looked like phone numbers. "Liam has a gambling problem," Sarah continued. "A massive one. He started with sports betting, moved to high-stakes poker, and then got into online crypto casinos. He has lost over $4 million in the last 3 years. $4 million, I whispered. I thought about the times he had asked me for small loans claiming cash flow issues with his business. I had given them to him. I had enabled this. "But that is not the worst part," Sarah said. Her voice dropped an octave. "He borrowed money to chase his losses, and he did not borrow from a bank. He borrowed from a syndicate operating out of Brighton Beach, Eastern European organized crime." "The Russians," I said, remembering the conversation I had heard through the window. "Yes," Sarah said. "He owes them $2.2 million, and the interest is compounding daily. They gave him a deadline, the end of this month. If he does not pay, they are not going to sue him. They are going to hurt him, and probably anyone close to him." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Jasmine. My daughter was living in a house with a man who had a target on his back. "That explains the house," I said. He needs the cash. It explains why he is desperate, Sarah said. But the federal flag on your title, that is because of how he tried to get the money. He wasn't just trying to sell the house Clinton. He was trying to wash the money. The buyer he lined up, the cash buyer. It is a shell company linked to the same syndicate he owes money to. I stared at her. He is paying his debt with my house, I realized. He is giving them my property to settle his score. Exactly, Sarah said. It is a laundering scheme. They buy the house with dirty cash, Liam uses that cash to pay them back, and they end up with a clean asset worth $2 million. It is a wash for them, and Liam walks away with his kneecaps intact. But you end up homeless and potentially indicted as an accessory to money laundering. My hands clenched into fists on my knees. The audacity was breathtaking. He was going to frame me for a federal crime to save his own skin. Is that it? I asked. Sarah hesitated. She looked down at the file, then back at me. Her expression softened, which terrified me more than her anger. No, Clinton. That is not it. She pulled another document from the folder. It was a printout of an email chain. We accessed his cloud accounts, she said. Don't ask me how, just read it. I picked up the paper. The email was from Liam to an address I did not recognize. The subject line was, Subject Patient Ross. I read the text. Dr. Thorne. Per our discussion, my father-in-law's cognitive decline has accelerated. He is becoming aggressive and paranoid. He is forgetting significant events. We need to expedite the competency hearing. I am willing to pay the rush fee we discussed. Please have the guardianship papers ready for signature by Friday. I looked up at Sarah. Dr. Thorne. Who is Dr. Thorne? He is a doctor for hire, Sarah said, her voice dripping with disgust. He lost his license in Florida for pill pushing and set up shop here as a geriatric consultant. He specializes in rubber stamping dementia diagnoses for families who want to take control of estates. Liam has agreed to pay him $10,000 to certify that you have advanced dementia. Dementia, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. They were going to steal my mind. They were going to erase me. If he gets that certification, Sarah said, leaning forward, he can file for emergency guardianship. He becomes your legal custodian. He can sign deeds, access bank accounts, and make medical decisions for you. He can put you in sunny meadows and drug you until you really do not know who you are anymore. And he plans to do this by Friday. Friday. That was 3 days away. I sat back in the chair. The room felt very small. I thought of Jasmine. Did she know? Was she part of this? The email only had Liam's name on it, but she was living with him. She was watching him. We have enough to go to the police right now, Sarah said. We have the attempted mortgage fraud. We have the email soliciting a fake diagnosis. We can have him arrested by dinner time. I looked out the window at the city skyline. I saw the bridges I had helped build. I saw the steel skeletons of buildings rising from the concrete. I knew how to build things, and I knew how to demolish them. A controlled demolition requires precision. You do not just blow it up. You weaken the supports until the whole thing comes down under its own weight. No, I said. Sarah blinked. No. Clinton, this man is dangerous. He is cornered. If we arrest him now, I said, Jasmine will blame the system. She will blame me. She will say it was a misunderstanding. She will say I overreacted. She is still under his spell, Sarah. She is terrified of him, but she is also trying to protect him. If I take him down today, I lose my daughter forever. She will hate me for destroying her husband. So, what do you want to do? Sarah asked. I need her to see it, I said. I need her to choose. I need to know if she is his victim or his accomplice. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I looked old. My hair was gray. My shoulders were stooped. That is what they saw. An old man. A resource to be harvested. I am going to cook them dinner, I said. Sarah stared at me. Dinner. I am going to invite them over tonight, I said, turning back to her. I am going to tell them I have reconsidered. I am going to tell them I am ready to sign the papers. Clinton, that is risky, Sarah warned. I need you to prepare a document, Sarah, I said, ignoring her warning. I need a power of attorney form. It needs to look exactly like the standard state form, but I need you to add a clause that triggers only upon the signature of the grantor. What kind of clause? Sarah asked, picking up her pen. A trap, I said. And I need you to get the FBI on the phone. If they are watching my house, I want them to have a front row seat to the show. Sarah looked at me for a long moment. Then a slow, sharp smile spread across her face. "You are going to bait him," she said. "I am going to give him exactly what he wants," I said. "And then I am going to let him hang himself with it." Sarah nodded. "I will draw up the papers. I will contact the agent in charge of the Sterling investigation. But Clinton, you have to be careful. If Liam realizes you are playing him, he might get violent." I looked down at my heavy work boots. I thought about the 1980s. I thought about the job sites where men had swung wrenches at my head because they didn't like taking orders from a black man. I had survived them all. "Let him try," I said. I took the file. I shook Sarah's hand. I walked out of the office. The receptionist smiled at me this time, a nervous, terrified smile. I did not smile back. I had a dinner to prepare. And I had a performance to deliver. I was going to be the confused, defeated old man they wanted me to be. I was going to give Liam Sterling the rope. All I had to do was wait for him to kick the chair. The smell of dark roux filled the kitchen. It was a heavy, earthy scent that usually brought me comfort, reminding me of Sundays with Lucille, of laughter and jazz playing on the radio. But tonight, it smelled like a funeral. I stood over the cast-iron pot, stirring the mixture with a wooden spoon. You cannot rush a gumbo. You have to let the flour and oil cook until they turn the color of dark chocolate. If you burn it, you have to start over. If you take it off too soon, it has no depth. It requires patience and attention to detail. Two things my son-in-law knew absolutely nothing about. I had texted Jasmine at 3 in the afternoon. I told her I was ready to talk. I told her I had thought about what they said, and I was tired of fighting. It was the lie they wanted to hear, so they swallowed it whole. They said they would be there at 7. I set the table in the dining room. I used the good china, the plates with the gold rim that we only used for Christmas. I polished the silverware. I wanted this to look like a surrender. I wanted them to see an old man clinging to tradition one last time before being shipped off to the warehouse. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the door. I walked slowly, adding a slight shuffle to my step. I hunched my shoulders just a fraction. It was a performance and the curtain was going up. Liam stood on the porch holding a bottle of wine. He was wearing a casual polo shirt and slacks, looking like he had just come from a round of golf. He was smiling. It was the smile of a shark that smells blood in the water. Jasmine stood behind him, clutching her purse with both hands. She was wearing a dress I had bought her for her birthday last year, but she looked uncomfortable in it. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Hey, Dad," Liam said, breezing past me. "It smells great in here. Is that your famous gumbo?" He walked straight to the dining room and set the wine bottle on the table. I glanced at the label. It was a cheap supermarket blend, but he had peeled off the price tag. He probably thought I wouldn't know the difference. He probably thought my palate was as gone as my mind. Jasmine lingered in the hallway. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. She looked at the floor, at the walls, at the ceiling, anywhere but at me. "Hello, baby girl," I said softly. "Go on in. Dinner is ready." We sat down. I served the gumbo over rice, the steam rising in thick curls. Liam poured the wine without asking. He filled my glass to the brim, then his own. "To family," he said, raising his glass, "and to making the right decisions." I lifted my glass but did not drink. "To family," I echoed. We ate in a silence that was broken only by the scrape of spoons against china. Liam ate quickly, hungrily. He was a man with an appetite that could never be satisfied. He wiped his mouth with a linen napkin and leaned back in his chair. "So, Dad," he said, getting right to business, "we are really glad you called. We were worried about you running off like that, but I am glad you came to your senses." I looked down at my bowl. "I am just tired, Liam," I said, keeping my voice low and weary. "I looked at the stairs today and they just seemed so steep. Maybe you are right. Maybe it is time." Liam's eyes lit up. He kicked Jasmine under the table. I saw her jump. "It is the smart move, Clinton," he said, using my first name for the first time. "And Sunny Meadows is fantastic. I called the director today. They have a room opening up on the first floor. It has a view of the garden. They have bridge tournaments on Tuesdays. You will make friends in no time. It is basically a resort." A resort. I thought about the investigative report Sarah had shown me about Sunny Meadows, the citations for bed sores, the medication errors, the food that was barely fit for livestock. "That sounds nice," I lied. "It is," Liam insisted. And the best part is, we can handle all the heavy lifting, the sale, the movers, the paperwork. You do not have to lift a finger. We just want you to relax." He reached under his chair and pulled out a leather portfolio. He unzipped it with a sharp, decisive sound. He pulled out a stack of documents, crisp and white, held together by a black binder clip. "I took the liberty of drawing these up," he said, sliding the stack across the polished wood table. "It is a standard power of attorney and a quitclaim deed authorization. It just gives me the authority to list the house and handle the closing. That way you do not have to come to all the meetings. You can just get settled in your new place, and I will make sure the check gets deposited right into your account." He tapped the paper with his index finger. "Right into your account." I looked at the document. It was thick. The text was dense, single-spaced legal jargon. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my reading glasses. I put them on, taking my time, adjusting them on my nose. I picked up the document. My hands trembled slightly. It wasn't an act. The rage inside me was making my nerves vibrate like a high-tension wire. I flipped through the pages. I saw the clauses Sarah had warned me about, the clause granting unrestricted access to banking, the clause allowing the agent to liquidate assets without oversight. And then I found it. Clause 4. The disbursement of funds. I peered at it through my glasses, squinting. "My eyes are not what they used to be," I muttered. "The print is so small." "Here, let me help," Liam said, reaching for the paper. "No," I said, pulling it back. "I want Jasmine to read it." I looked at my daughter. She had not touched her food. She was staring at her wine glass, her face pale. "Jasmine, baby," I said, "read this section for me. Clause 4. I want to make sure I understand where the money goes. Liam says it goes to my account. I just want to hear it." Jasmine looked up. Her eyes were wide and wet. She looked at Liam. He gave her a hard stare, a silent command. He nodded almost imperceptibly toward the paper. "Go ahead, honey," Liam said, his voice dripping with fake encouragement. "Read it to your dad so he feels comfortable." Jasmine reached out and took the document. Her hands were shaking so bad the paper rattled. She looked down at Clause 4. I knew what it said. I had memorized the legal language Sarah had explained to me. It said that all proceeds from the sale of the property after the satisfaction of liens would be deposited into the Sterling Family Trust for the benefit and management of the grantor. It did not say my account. It said their trust. The trust that was empty. The trust Liam used to hide his gambling losses. Jasmine stared at the words. The silence stretched out heavy and suffocating. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked. Tick, tock, tick, tock. "Read it, Jasmine," I said softly. She took a deep breath. She swallowed hard. "It says," she began, her voice cracking. "It says that the proceeds from the sale will be deposited directly into Clinton Ross's personal savings account for his exclusive use and benefit." The lie hung in the air between us. It was a physical thing, sharp and cold. She had looked at the words, saw the theft, and she had looked me in the eye and lied to protect him. My heart broke. It did not shatter loudly. It just quietly split down the middle. I had held onto a sliver of hope that she was a victim, that she was coerced. And maybe she was. But in this moment, she made a choice. She chose the predator over the prey. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the little girl I taught to ride a bike. I saw the teenager I helped with algebra. And I saw a stranger. "Okay," I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "That sounds right." Liam let out a breath he had been holding. "See, Dad. I told you. We are looking out for you." He pulled a pen from his pocket. It was a heavy, expensive fountain pen. He uncapped it and held it out to me. "Just sign on the last page," he said, "and initials on the bottom of each page." I took the pen. It felt heavy in my hand. I looked at the signature line. This was the moment. This was the trap. I am naturally right-handed. I have been my whole life. Liam knew that. Jasmine knew that. But Liam was so blinded by the dollar signs dancing in his eyes that he was not paying attention to the man, only the hand. I shifted the pen to my left hand. I gripped it awkwardly like a child holding a crayon. I leaned over the paper. "My arthritis is acting up," I mumbled. "Take your time," Liam said. He was practically vibrating with anticipation. He was watching the tip of the pen like a hawk watching a field mouse. I touched the pen to the paper. I wrote my name, Clinton. The letters were jagged, uneven, and slanted the wrong way. It looked like the signature of a man whose mind and body were failing him. It looked nothing like the signature on my driver's license or my bank cards, or the title deed recorded at the county office 10 years ago. I signed the last page with a flourish of shaky ink. "There," I said, dropping the pen. Liam snatched the document before the ink was even dry. He looked at the signature. He did not see a forgery. He saw $2.4 million. He saw his salvation. He saw the Russians backing off. "Perfect," he said, grinning. He blew on the ink to dry it. "This is perfect, Dad. You made the right choice." He quickly shoved the papers back into his portfolio and zipped it shut. He stood up, his energy manic. "Well, we should get going," he said. "I need to file this first thing in the morning, and we need to finalize the movers." "You are leaving?" I asked. "You haven't finished your wine." "We have a lot to do," Jasmine said quickly, standing up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She could not get out of there fast enough. The guilt was eating her alive, but not enough to make her stop. "Monday," Liam said. "The truck will be here at 8 a.m. Have your bags packed. Just clothes. We will handle the furniture." He walked to the door without looking back. Jasmine followed him. She paused at the doorway, her hand on the frame. She looked back at me, sitting alone at the head of the table with my bowl of cooling gumbo. "Bye, Dad," she whispered. "Goodbye, Jasmine," I said. The door closed. I heard the lock click. I heard the engine of the BMW roar to life and speed away. I sat there for a long time. I looked at the empty chairs. I looked at the cheap wine bottle. Then I picked up my spoon and took a bite of my gumbo. It was cold, but the flavor was deep and rich. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I dialed Sarah. "He took the bait," I said. "Did he sign it?" Sarah asked. "I signed it," I corrected her, "with my left hand." "And Jasmine." Jasmine verified the terms. I heard the sorrow in my own voice, and I knew Sarah heard it too. "I am sorry, Clinton," she said softly. "It is done," I said. "Let the FBI know. He is going to try to use that paper tomorrow." I hung up. I cleared the table. I washed the dishes. I put the good china back in the cabinet. Then I went upstairs and packed a single suitcase. Not because I was moving to Sunny Meadows, but because this house was about to become a battlefield and I needed to be in position. Liam thought he had a golden ticket. He did not know he was holding a signed confession. He thought Monday was his victory lap. He did not know it was going to be his execution. I turned off the lights and stood in the dark looking out at the street. "Come and get it, Liam," I whispered. "Come and get it." Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee from a paper cup because I had packed the mugs the night before. I was ready. My suitcase was by the door. I expected Liam to arrive at 9 o'clock with a professional moving crew. I expected a tense but civil handover. I underestimated his desperation. At 6:30 in the morning, the house shook. A heavy diesel engine roared in the driveway, followed by the screech of air brakes. It sounded less like a moving truck and more like a military invasion. I looked out the window. A battered box truck, rusted and dented, had backed right up to my front porch, crushing the azalea bushes Lucille had planted for our 20th anniversary. 2 men jumped out of the cab. They were not uniformed movers. They looked like day laborers Liam had picked up from a street corner, wearing stained tank tops and smoking cigarettes. The front door burst open. Liam did not use a key. He kicked it. He strode into the hallway wearing the same clothes he had on the night before. His eyes were bloodshot and wild. He looked like a man who had been up all night staring at a ticking clock. "Get it all out," Liam shouted to the men outside. "Everything goes. If it is not in a box, throw it in the truck. We need this place empty by noon." I stood up slowly. My joints ached from the damp morning air. "Liam," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You said 8 o'clock. You said we would do this properly. Plans changed, Dad." Liam snapped. He walked past me without looking at me, kicking my suitcase aside. "The buyer wants a walkthrough at 1, an empty walkthrough. That means you and your junk need to be gone, now." He signaled to the 2 men. They marched into my living room and started grabbing things. They did not lift furniture. They dragged it. The screech of chair legs gouging the hardwood floors I had sanded by hand sounded like a scream. "Hey," I shouted, stepping forward. "Be careful with that." That chair belonged to my mother. "It is garbage," Liam spat. "It is old wood. It smells like old people. Get it out of here." He turned to me, a manic grin on his face. "This is happening, Clinton. Do not try to stall. You signed the papers. This is my house now, and I am evicting the previous tenant." Jasmine walked in then. She looked like a ghost. She was wearing sunglasses indoors, probably to hide the swelling from where he had hit her, or maybe to hide the shame in her eyes. She stood by the door hugging herself, watching the men tear apart her childhood home. "Jasmine," I said, "tell him to stop. This is not necessary." She looked at me, then looked at Liam. Liam shot her a look of pure venom. A warning. "Just go." "Dad," she whispered. "Please, just go to the home. It will be easier. Easier for who I asked." But she turned away. The brutality of the next hour is something I will never forget. It was not a move. It was a purge. The men swept through the rooms, dumping drawers onto the floor, tossing books into heaps, and dragging mattresses down the stairs. They broke things. I heard the shatter of a lamp in the study. I heard the crack of wood in the dining room. I stood in the center of the chaos, clutching my small suitcase, feeling a helplessness I hadn't felt since I was a child. This was my life being dismantled by a man who saw no value in anything he couldn't sell. Then Liam walked over to the mantelpiece. He picked up the silver-framed photograph of Lucille. It was my favorite picture of her, taken on the day we paid off the mortgage. She was smiling, her eyes bright, holding the deed in her hand. "Nice frame," Liam muttered. He popped the back open and shook the photo out. The picture fluttered to the floor, landing face down in the dust. He pocketed the silver frame. Then he looked at the photo on the floor. He lifted his heavy boot and ground his heel into it. He twisted his foot, tearing the paper, smearing Lucille's smile into the dirt. That was the breaking point. The cold calculation I had maintained for days snapped. A roar of pure, primal rage erupted from my chest. "No," I screamed. I lunged at him. I was 68 years old, but I had spent 40 years hauling steel. I hit him with my shoulder, knocking him back against the wall. I scrambled for the photo, my hands shaking, trying to save the pieces of my wife's face. "You animal," I shouted. "You possess nothing but greed." Liam recovered quickly. He was younger, heavier, and fueled by a desperate adrenaline. He grabbed me by the collar of my flannel shirt and shoved me. He didn't just push me, he threw me. I stumbled back, my boots catching on a loose rug. I fell hard. My hip hit the floor with a sickening thud that rattled my teeth. Pain shot up my spine. I lay there for a moment, stunned, gasping for air. Liam stood over me, panting, his fists clenched. "Don't you ever touch me, old man," he hissed. "You are lucky I don't break your jaw. You are nothing. You are a signature on a piece of paper. You are a liability." I looked up from the floor. I looked past Liam to the doorway. Jasmine was standing there. She saw him throw me. She saw her father, the man who carried her on his shoulders, lying broken on the floor. "Jasmine." I wheezed. "Help me." She took a step forward, her hand raising instinctively. "Stay there," Liam barked at her without turning around. Jasmine froze. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face from behind her dark glasses. Her lip quivered. "I am sorry, Dad," she mouthed silently. But she did not move. She did not help me up. She stood there and watched. That was the moment my heart truly hardened. The betrayal in the dining room was one thing. But this physical cowardice, this refusal to act while I lay in the dirt, severed the last thread of hope I had for her. She was gone. The daughter I raised was gone. One of the movers laughed. It was a cruel, gritty sound. "You want us to toss him in the truck too, boss?" the man asked. "No," Liam said, straightening his jacket. "His ride is here." He pointed out the window. A white van with the logo Sunny Meadows Senior Living printed on the side had pulled up to the curb. It looked like a dog catcher's van. The driver was honking the horn impatiently. "Get your stuff and get out," Clinton Liam said. "Enjoy the bingo." I pushed myself up. My hips screamed in protest, but I forced myself to stand. I would not let him see me crawl. I brushed the dust off my pants. I picked up my suitcase. I bent down and carefully, reverently picked up the torn pieces of Lucille's photograph and put them in my pocket. I looked Liam in the eye. He expected fear. He expected begging. Instead, I gave him a smile. It was a small, cold thing. "You have made a mistake, Liam," I said softly. He laughed. "The only mistake I made was waiting this long. Get out." I walked out the front door. The sun was blinding. The yard was a disaster zone of my belongings. I walked down the porch steps past the crushed hydrangeas. The driver of the Sunny Meadows van rolled down his window. Clinton Ross, he yelled. Hop in, Pops. We are on a schedule. I stopped on the sidewalk. I looked at the van. It smelled of bleach and despair. No, I said. What the driver asked. I am not going with you, I said. Behind me, Liam and Jasmine came out onto the porch to watch the show. Get in the van, Clinton Liam shouted. Don't make a scene. I ignored him. I turned my back to the van and looked down the street. A long, sleek black car turned the corner. It was a Lincoln Continental polished to a mirror shine with tinted windows and diplomatic plates. It glided down the street like a shark in dark water. It pulled up to the curb right in front of me, blocking the Sunny Meadows van. The driver's door opened. A man in a black suit and sunglasses stepped out. He was 6'4", built like a linebacker. He walked around the car and opened the rear door. He stood at attention. Good morning, Chairman, the driver said. His voice was deep and respectful. It carried clearly across the lawn. We have the meeting prepared at the penthouse. Liam's jaw dropped. He stepped off the porch, confusion warring with his arrogance. Who is that? Liam demanded. What is going on? You cannot afford a limo, Clinton. Stop wasting my money. I handed my suitcase to the driver. He took it with a bow and placed it in the trunk. I turned to Liam one last time. It is not your money, Liam, I said, and it never was. I got into the back seat of the car. The interior smelled of fresh leather and conditioned air. I sat back as the driver closed the door with a solid, reassuring thud. Through the tinted glass, I saw Liam standing on the curb in his disheveled clothes, looking small and confused. He was shouting something, waving his arms, but I could not hear him. He looked like a man trying to stop the tide. Go, I said to the driver. The car pulled away smoothly. I did not look back at the house. It was not my home anymore. It was a crime scene, and I was the witness who got away. Liam thought I was renting a car to save face. He thought I was burning through my meager savings for one last act of defiance. He had no idea where I was going. He had no idea that the man driving the car was not a chauffeur, but a private security contractor I had hired through Sarah. We drove toward the city skyline. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the torn photo of Lucille. I smoothed it out on my knee. We are going to get him, Lucy, I whispered. The pain in my hip was a dull throb now, a reminder of the assault. I would need to see a doctor to document the bruising. Another piece of evidence for the pile. I took a deep breath. The first phase was complete. I was out. I was safe. And Liam had the house. He thought he had won, but he was sitting on a bomb, and I was the one holding the detonator. 3 days had passed since the movers threw my life onto the sidewalk. 3 days of silence. To the outside world, Clinton Ross had vanished, presumably swallowed up by the sterile hallways of the Sunny Meadows nursing home. But I was not in a nursing home. I was watching a live feed of my own living room on a high-definition monitor. Liam did not wait for the ink to dry on his victory. He did not mourn the dismantling of my home. He celebrated it. It was Friday night, and my house, the sanctuary I had built for my wife and daughter, had been turned into a fraternity house for desperate, sweating men in cheap suits. I sat in a leather armchair, a glass of water in my hand, watching the screen with a detachment that frightened me. Liam had invited his associates. I recognized a few of them. There was a shady mortgage broker who had lost his license 2 years ago. There was a guy I knew from the old neighborhood who ran a chop shop. And there were others, men with hard eyes and expensive watches who did not look like they belonged in a Victorian home in the suburbs. Liam was holding court in the center of the room. He had opened a bottle of champagne, spraying foam onto the hardwood floors. To the future, Liam shouted, raising his glass. To assets, to liquidity. The men cheered. They laughed. One of them, a heavy-set man with a thick gold chain, kicked his feet up onto my coffee table. The same table where Lucille used to do her crossword puzzles every Sunday morning. Nice place, Liam, the man grunted. How did you get the old man out so fast? Liam laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. Persuasion, Tony. Pure persuasion. He knew it was time. He signed over power of attorney and practically begged me to handle it. He is probably eating applesauce and watching Wheel of Fortune right now. I tightened my grip on the glass. The disrespect was visceral. It felt like he was spitting on my grave while I was still breathing. But the party was just a cover. I watched as Liam checked his phone nervously every few minutes. He was sweating. His smile was tight. Around 10 o'clock, his phone rang. The room went quiet as Liam held up a hand. I have to take this, he said. It is the investors. He walked into my study. I switched the camera feed. I had placed a pinhole camera in the bookshelf right between a structural engineering textbook and a volume of poetry Lucille loved. Liam closed the door and leaned against it. He looked terrified. The bravado vanished instantly. "Yes, I have the house," he whispered into the phone. "It is empty. The old man is gone." He listened for a moment, nodding frantically. No inspections. I told you, cash only. As is. I can sign the deed over tomorrow. I have the power of attorney. It is notarized." He paused again. He wiped sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. 1.5 million, he said. "Yes. I know the valuation is 2.4, but I need the cash now. 1.5 is fine. Just bring the briefcase. Tomorrow at noon." He was selling a $2 million asset for 1.5 million just to save his own skin. He was liquidating my life at a 40% discount to pay off a gambling debt to the mob. "Okay," he said. "Noon. I will have the notary here. Do not be late." He hung up the phone and slumped against the door. He looked sick. He looked like a man who knew he was walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. I turned away from the screen. I had seen enough. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse. The city light stretched out below me, a grid of gold and white. I was not in a nursing home. I was in the Skyline Residences, a luxury building downtown. I owned the penthouse. I had bought it 5 years ago as an investment property, hiding it under an LLC named after my mother. Neither Jasmine nor Liam knew it existed. They thought I was a retired laborer with a pension and a house. They never bothered to ask what a structural engineer with 40 years of patents and consulting fees actually earned. The air in the penthouse was cool and smelled of lemon verbena. It was quiet, a stark contrast to the noise and filth filling my home in the suburbs. Sitting at the dining table behind me were 2 people. Sarah Jenkins, my lawyer, was typing on her laptop. Across from her sat Special Agent Miller of the FBI. He was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite, wearing a suit that fit too perfectly. "He is moving the sale to tomorrow," I said, turning to face them. "Noon. 1.5 million cash." Agent Miller looked up. "Did he identify the buyer?" "He called them the investors," I said. "But based on the conversation, they are bringing cash. A briefcase." Miller nodded. "That tracks. We have been monitoring the syndicate he owes money to. They use distressed real estate transactions to wash their cash. They buy low with dirty money, sell high later, and the profit comes out clean. Your house is just a laundry machine to them. So we have them?" I asked. "Not yet," Miller said. "Attempting to sell is not enough. We need him to execute the fraud. We need him to try to use that forged signature to facilitate a financial crime. We need the money on the table. And we need him to cross the line with the bank," Sarah added. She tapped her screen. "He has the power of attorney document, the one you signed with your left hand." I looked at my left hand. It felt tired. "He thinks it is a golden ticket," I said. "He is going to try to drain your accounts before he sells the house," Sarah predicted. "He needs operating cash. He is broke. If he tries to access your retirement fund or your savings with that document, it triggers the bank fraud charge immediately." The room fell silent. We were hunters waiting in a blind. It was a strange feeling, hunting your own family. I looked at the phone on the table. It was a burner phone I had bought just for this. My real phone was stored in a Faraday bag so they couldn't track me. I thought about Jasmine. Was she at the party? I hadn't seen her on the cameras. Was she crying in a bedroom somewhere? Or was she relieved that the problem of her father had been solved? The uncertainty was a physical weight in my chest. I wanted to save her, but I couldn't save someone who didn't want to be found. Suddenly, Sarah's laptop pinged. It was a sharp digital sound that cut through the quiet room. She sat up straighter. Her eyes scanned the screen. A slow, grim smile spread across her face. "Here we go," she said. "What is it?" I asked, walking over to the table. Sarah turned the laptop so I could see. It was a notification from the bank's fraud department. "Priority alert," the subject line read. "Unauthorized access attempt. He just walked into the First National branch on 4th Street, Sarah said. He is trying to withdraw $50,000 from your pension account. He presented the power of attorney document." I looked at the timestamp. It was 9:15 a.m. The bank had just opened. Agent Miller leaned in. "Did the system flag it?" Sarah nodded. "Clinton's account has a biometric lock, and the signature verification failed immediately." The teller scanned the document. The system recognized the discrepancy between the left-handed signature on the paper and the right-handed signature on file. It triggered a silent alarm. "So he is trapped?" I asked. "In a manner of speaking," Miller said. "The bank is instructed not to arrest him on the spot. We told them to tell him there is a 24-hour hold on the funds due to the amount. They will tell him to come back tomorrow." Why, I asked. "If he committed fraud, why not take him now?" "Because we want the big fish," Miller said. "We want the men bringing the briefcase to your house tomorrow. If we arrest Liam now, the sale gets canceled. The syndicate walks away. We want to catch them all in the same net." I understood. I was the engineer. I knew about load-bearing walls. Liam was a load-bearing wall in this criminal enterprise. If we pulled him out too early, the whole case would crumble before we got the people at the top. "So we wait," I said. "We wait," Miller confirmed. "But make no mistake, Mr. Ross. As of this moment, your son-in-law has committed federal bank fraud. That carries a sentence of up to 30 years. He has crossed the Rubicon. 30 years. I looked at the screen again. I saw the notification. It was just text on a screen, but it was a death sentence for Liam's life as a free man. "He did this to himself," I whispered. "He did," Sarah said gently. She reached out and touched my arm. "You gave him a choice, Clinton. He chose to steal." I walked back to the window. I felt cold. My house was full of criminals. My bank account was under siege. My daughter was missing in action. But the trap was set. The jaws were open. "Tomorrow at noon," I said. "Tomorrow at noon," Miller agreed. "We will have a tactical team in place 2 blocks away. We will have surveillance on the house. When that briefcase opens, we move." I nodded. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I looked tired. I looked like a man who had lost everything, but I hadn't lost. Not yet. I turned back to them. "I want to be there," I said. Sarah frowned. "Clinton, it is dangerous. These are violent men." "It is my house," I said. "I am not asking. When you take them down, I want to walk through that front door. I want him to see me. I want him to know exactly who did this." Miller looked at me. He assessed me. He saw the set of my jaw. He saw the engineer who didn't back down from corrupt foremen. "Okay," Miller said. "You stay in the command vehicle until the scene is secure. But once they are cuffed, you can go in." "Thank you," I said. I went into the bedroom of the penthouse. I sat on the edge of the bed. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the torn photo of Lucille. I placed it on the nightstand. "One more day, Lucy," I said to the empty room. "Just one more day." I lay down, but I kept my boots on. I was a soldier in a trench waiting for the whistle to blow. The silence of the penthouse was no longer scary. It was the silence of a held breath. The silence before the explosion. Saturday morning arrived with a silence that felt heavy and suffocating. I was not in a nursing home eating oatmeal. I was sitting on an Italian leather sofa in my penthouse overlooking the city harbor. The morning light reflected off the water, creating a dazzling display that hurt my tired eyes. Beside me, Sarah Jenkins was reviewing the final logistics with Agent Miller. The raid was set for tomorrow at noon, but today the psychological warfare continued. I had my burner phone in my hand. I knew Jasmine would call. She had to. The guilt would be eating her alive, gnawing at her insides like a parasite. She needed to hear my voice. She needed me to tell her that she was a good daughter, that she had done the right thing, that Sunny Meadows was a paradise and not a prison. She needed absolution. At 10 o'clock, the phone rang. It was her. I gestured to Sarah. She nodded and muted the room. I walked over to the high-end sound system I had installed in the living room. I selected a track. It was a recording of a chaotic bingo hall mixed with a low-quality rendition of Nessun Dorma playing over a crackly speaker. I turned the volume up just enough to create a background ambiance of institutional mediocrity. I answered the phone. "Hello," I said. My voice was a little shaky, a little distant. I channeled every ounce of the confused old man they wanted me to be. "Dad." Jasmine's voice came through the line. It was tight and breathless. "Hi. How are you? How is the new place?" I sat back, looking out at the skyline. I took a sip of my freshly ground Ethiopian coffee. "It is fine, Jasmine," I said slowly. "The nurse, a nice lady named Betty, she gave me my pills. They make me feel a little floaty. And we had oatmeal. It was warm." I heard her exhale. A sigh of relief. She wanted to believe I was content. She wanted to believe she hadn't just discarded me. "That is good, Dad," she said. "I am so glad. Liam said it would be good for you. He said you would be safer there." "Liam is a smart man," I lied. The words tasted like bile. There was a pause. I could hear the background noise on her end. She was not at her house. She was at my house. Or rather, the empty shell that used to be my house. I could hear the echo of her voice bouncing off the bare walls. "Dad," she said, her voice dropping. "I am at the house. We are just doing a final sweep before the buyers come tomorrow." I gripped the phone tighter. She was standing in the ruins of our life, getting ready to hand the keys to the mafia. "That is nice, honey," I said. "Listen, Jasmine, my mind is a little fuzzy today, but I woke up worrying about something." "What is it, Dad?" she asked. "The safe," I said. "In the master bedroom closet, behind the loose floorboard. I think I left my old journal in there. Your mother gave it to me. I do not want the new owners to throw it away." I heard her movement stop. A safe. She did not know about a safe. I had never told her. "You have a safe?" she asked. "Yes," I mumbled. "Just a small one. I put things in there I did not want to lose. Can you check it for me? The code is your birthday. Month, day, year." "My birthday?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "It was always my lucky number." I heard a sniffle. She was crying. "Okay, Dad," she said. "I will look. I will get it for you." "Thank you, baby girl," I said. "You are a good girl. You always take care of your old dad." I hung up the phone before she could say anything else. I turned off the bingo hall noise. The silence returned to the penthouse, but now it was charged with electricity. I turned to Agent Miller. "Switch the feed," I said. Miller tapped his keyboard. On the large monitor on the wall, the view changed. We were looking into the master bedroom of my old house. I had installed a camera inside the smoke detector years ago. I saw Jasmine walk into the room. She looked small in the empty space. The bed was gone. The dresser was gone. The only thing left was the dust outlines on the floor where the furniture used to be. She was wearing the same clothes she had on yesterday. She looked exhausted. She walked to the closet. She knelt down and felt around the floorboards. She found the loose one. I saw her struggle to pry it up with her fingernails. She broke a nail, but she didn't stop. She pulled the board up and set it aside. There it was. A small fireproof safe sunk into the subfloor. She stared at it for a moment. She wiped her eyes. Then she reached out and punched in the code. Her birthday. Beep, 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 click. The light turned green. She pulled the heavy door open. I watched her face closely. She was expecting money. I knew she was. Liam had probably told her I was hoarding cash. She was expecting stacks of bills that could solve their problems, that could pay off the Russians without selling the house. She was hoping for a miracle. But the safe was empty of money. There was no cash. There were no diamonds. There was only a single silver USB drive sitting in the center of the velvet-lined box. Jasmine reached in and picked it up. She turned it over in her hand. She looked confused. She looked back into the safe, feeling around the corners, hoping to find a hidden envelope. Nothing. She sat back on her heels, holding the drive. She looked at it as if it were an alien artifact. "Check the living room feed," I told Miller. "Is Liam there?" Miller switched views. The living room was empty. "He went to meet the notary," Miller said. "He is prepping the paperwork for tomorrow. She is alone." "Good," I said. On the screen, Jasmine stood up. She walked out of the closet clutching the USB drive. She went to the window seat, the only place left to sit. She pulled a laptop out of her bag. It was Liam's laptop. I recognized the stickers on the lid. She sat down and opened it. She plugged the drive in. I held my breath. This was the gamble. I had loaded that drive 3 days ago, right before I left the house. It contained 2 files. The first file was a video I had recorded off the security system 2 weeks prior. Jasmine clicked the trackpad. She opened the first file. I could not see the laptop screen from the camera angle, but I knew exactly what was playing. It was a recording of Liam talking on the phone in the garage. He thought he was alone. He thought no one was listening. I watched Jasmine's face. The blue light of the screen illuminated her features. At first she looked confused. Then her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly. Through the speakers in the penthouse, I could almost hear Liam's recorded voice echoing in her mind. "Yeah, the wife is on board," Liam had said in the video. She is pathetic, honestly. She will do whatever I say. Once we sell the house and pay off the debt, I am done. I am taking the rest of the cash and I am leaving. I cannot stand her whining anymore. She is just like her father. Weak. Useless. I saw Jasmine flinch as if she had been slapped. She brought a hand up to her mouth. She was shaking her head, denying what she was hearing. Her husband, the man she betrayed her father for, was calling her pathetic. He was planning to abandon her the moment the check cleared. Then she clicked the second file. This was an audio recording. It was a conversation I had with my estate attorney 6 months ago. We were discussing my will. I watched Jasmine as the audio played. She leaned closer to the screen. Tears began to stream down her face, fast and heavy. In the recording, my voice was clear and strong. I want everything to go to Jasmine, I had said. The house, the investments, the savings. All of it. I want it in a trust that Liam cannot touch. I want her to be safe. She is my whole world, Sarah. I worked this hard so she would never have to worry. I just want her to be happy. Jasmine slammed the laptop shut. A wail of pure, unadulterated anguish ripped from her throat. It was a sound that made Sarah look away from the screen. She curled into a ball on the window seat, sobbing. Her body shook with violent tremors. She realized the magnitude of her mistake. She realized that she had traded a father who would die for her for a husband who was planning to leave her for dead. She screamed. It was a primal sound of regret. She clawed at her own hair. I watched a lump forming in my throat. I wanted to comfort her, but I couldn't. Pain was the only teacher left. Suddenly, the front door downstairs slammed open. I saw Jasmine freeze. She scrambled to wipe her face. She tried to shove the laptop back into her bag. Liam stomped into the room. He was holding a stack of papers. He looked stressed. His tie loosened sweat stains on his shirt. "What are you doing?" he barked, seeing her on the floor. "Why are you crying?" Jasmine stood up. She was trembling, but there was a new fire in her eyes. She held up the USB drive. "I found this," she said, her voice shaking. "In the safe. I heard you, Liam. I saw the video. You are leaving me." Liam stopped. He looked at the drive. He looked at the laptop. His face went blank. Then a dark, dangerous look settled over his features. He dropped the papers on the floor. He crossed the room in 2 long strides. "Give me that," he snarled. "No," Jasmine screamed, backing away. "You used me. You made me hurt my dad, and you were going to leave me." Liam lunged. He grabbed her wrist and twisted it. Jasmine cried out in pain and dropped the drive. Liam kicked it across the room. He stepped on it, grinding it into the floorboards until the plastic crunched and shattered. Then he grabbed the laptop. He lifted it over his head and smashed it onto the floor. Keys flew everywhere. The screen shattered. There, Liam shouted, his face inches from hers. No more videos. No more secrets. He grabbed Jasmine by the shoulders and shook her. "You listen to me, you stupid girl. It does not matter what you heard. It does not matter what I said. We are in this. The buyers are coming tomorrow at noon. If that sale does not happen, I am dead. And if I am dead, the people I owe money to are going to come looking for you. Do you understand?" Jasmine sobbed, trying to pull away. "I want to go home. I want my dad." "Your dad is gone," Liam screamed, shaking her so hard her head snapped back. "He is locked away. He is senile. He does not know you. You have nobody but me. So you are going to wash your face. You are going to put on a nice dress. And tomorrow you are going to smile and sign the papers as the witness. Or so help me, God, Jasmine, I will make you wish you were dead." He threw her back against the wall. She slid down to the floor, weeping uncontrollably. Liam stood over her, breathing hard. He adjusted his cuffs. "I am going to get a drink," he said. "Be ready tomorrow. Noon. Do not test me." He turned and walked out of the room, leaving her broken on the floor of the empty house. I watched the screen until the feed blurred from my own tears. My hands were clenched so tight my nails were digging into my palms. Agent Miller looked at me. His face was grim. "That is assault," Miller said. "We can go in now." "No," I said. My voice was cold steel. "Wait until tomorrow. Wait until the money is on the table. Wait until he thinks he has won." "But your daughter," Sarah said softly. "She needs to be there," I said. "She needs to see him in handcuffs. She needs to see me walk through that door. She needs to know that her father is not weak. She needs to know that I am the one who saves her." I looked back at the screen. Jasmine was still crying alone in the dark. "Hold on, baby girl," I whispered. "Just one more night. Daddy is coming, and I am bringing hell with me. Sunday noon arrived under a blanket of heavy gray clouds that blocked out the sun. I was sitting in my penthouse command center, my eyes glued to the monitors. Beside me, Sarah Jenkins sat with her arms crossed, her face a mask of intense concentration. Agent Miller was speaking into a headset, coordinating the tactical teams positioned 2 streets over. The air in the room was cold, conditioned to a sterile chill, but on the screen the heat was rising. My empty house looked like a stage set for a tragedy. The dust motes danced in the light coming through the bare windows. In the center of the living room, Liam had set up a folding card table and 4 metal chairs. It looked pathetic against the grandeur of the Victorian woodwork. Liam was pacing. He had changed his shirt, but he was already sweating through the armpits. He kept checking his watch, then checking the window. Jasmine sat in one of the metal chairs staring at her hands. She was wearing a high-necked floral dress that looked too cheerful for the occasion. She looked like a doll that someone had broken and put back on the shelf. At 12:05, a black Escalade with tinted windows rolled up to the curb. It did not park in the driveway. It stopped right in the street, engine running. "Here we go," Miller whispered. 3 men got out. They were not wearing business casual. They were wearing expensive tailored suits that fit too tightly across their shoulders. The man in the middle was older, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been chiseled out of cold granite. He carried a silver aluminum briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. The other 2 were younger, with thick necks and eyes that scanned the perimeter like radar. They were not realtors. They were muscle. Liam opened the front door before they could knock. He was smiling, but it was a rictus of terror. "Mr. Volkov," Liam said, his voice cracking slightly. "Welcome. Please come in." The older man, Volkov, stepped inside without a word. He looked around the empty room with a sneer. He did not care about the architecture. He did not care about the view. He cared about the asset. "Is the house clear?" Volkov asked. His voice was deep and heavily accented. "Russian," just as Sarah had predicted. "Clear and empty," Liam assured him, closing the door and locking it. "My father-in-law is in care. My wife is here to witness. We are ready to sign." Volkov walked to the folding table. He placed the aluminum case on the surface. It made a heavy, solid thud that echoed through the empty house. He unlocked the handcuff from his wrist. Then he spun the dials on the case. Click, click. He flipped the lid open. Even through the camera feed, the sight was breathtaking. Rows and rows of $100 bills strapped in bank bands. $1.5 million in untraceable cash. It was enough money to buy freedom. It was enough money to buy a life. But for Liam, it was just the price of his survival. Liam stared at the money with hunger. He reached out a hand, but one of the bodyguards stepped forward and slapped his hand away. "Paperwork first," Volkov said. "Then you touch." "Of course," Liam stammered, pulling his hand back. "The notary is right here." He gestured to a small, nervous man standing in the corner of the room. I had not noticed him before. He was blending into the shadows. He was sweating more than Liam. This was the corrupt notary the man paid to look the other way. "Let us get this done," Volkov said. "I have a plane to catch." The atmosphere in the room shifted. It was no longer a business meeting. It was a hostage exchange. The smell of gunpowder seemed to hang in the air, even though no shots had been fired. Yet. The notary, whose name was Mr. Green, according to the file, Sarah had stepped up to the table. He opened his own briefcase and pulled out a laptop and a stamp. He laid out the documents, the deed, the bill of sale, and the power of attorney document, the one I had signed with my left hand. I watched closely. This was the moment. The document was the trigger. Mr. Green picked up the power of attorney. He adjusted his glasses. He looked at the signature. It was shaky. It was jagged. "This is the grantor's signature?" Green asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," Liam said quickly. "He signed it right in front of me. Jasmine was there. Tell him Jasmine." Jasmine looked up. She looked at the men with the dead eyes. She looked at the suitcase of money. She looked at her husband, who was looking at her with a desperate, threatening glare. "Yes," she whispered. "He signed it." Green nodded. He didn't care if it was forged. He just needed someone to say it wasn't. "Okay," Green said. "I need to notarize the transfer deed based on this authority. Then I need to log the title transfer into the county database to clear the transaction for Mr. Volkov." Volkov nodded. "Do it. I want to see the confirmation code." Green sat down at the card table and opened his laptop. He connected to the personal hotspot on his phone. He began to type. Liam was bouncing on the balls of his feet. He was so close. He could almost feel the weight of that money. He was already planning his escape. He probably thought he would pay Volkov, take the leftover cash, and disappear before I ever figured out how to leave the nursing home. "Just sign here," Mr. Sterling Green said, pushing the paper toward Liam. "And Mrs. Sterling sign as witness." Liam signed with a flourish. Jasmine signed with a hand so shaky she almost dropped the pen. Green stamped the papers. Thud, thud. The physical act was done. Now came the digital one. "I am submitting the transfer request now," Green said. I watched the screen in the penthouse. Agent Miller leaned forward. "Wait for it," Miller whispered. Green hit enter on his laptop. I saw the reflection of the screen in his glasses. For a second, nothing happened. The little loading wheel spun. Liam leaned over the notary's shoulder. Come on," he muttered. Then the light in the room changed. The soft white glow of the laptop screen turned a harsh, angry red. Green froze. He blinked. He hit the enter key again. "What is it?" Liam asked, panic rising in his voice. "What is wrong?" I do not know," Green stammered. "It is an error message. Read it," Volkov commanded. Green squinted at the screen. He read the text slowly, his voice dropping to a whisper of pure terror. Status locked. Federal flag. Property frozen. FBI investigation pending. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a heart-stopping. Liam stepped back. "What? That is impossible." He signed it. "It is my house." Volkov did not look at the screen. He looked at Liam. His expression did not change, which was the most terrifying thing of all. He closed the lid of the briefcase with a soft click. "Federal flag," Volkov said quietly. "FBI." Liam put his hands up. No, listen, it is a mistake. The old man, he must have messed up the paperwork years ago. It is a glitch. We can fix it. I can call the county. You said the house was clear," Volkov said. He took a step toward Liam. "You said this was a clean wash. It is. It is clean. I swear," Liam pleaded. He backed away until he hit the wall. Volkov reached into his jacket. He did not pull out a phone. He pulled out a heavy matte black pistol with a silencer attached. The bodyguards drew their weapons instantly. Jasmine screamed. She threw herself onto the floor, covering her head with her hands. Mr. Green, the notary, scrambled backward, knocking his chair over. "I am just the notary," he squealed. I did not know. Volkov pointed the gun at Liam's chest. "You set us up," Volkov said. "You brought us to a Fed trap." "No," Liam screamed, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't. I swear. It is the old man. He tricked me." "Why would he trick you?" Volkov asked. "He is senile. You said he is a vegetable." He is, Liam sobbed. "I do not know what is happening. Please, take the money back. Just leave." "We cannot leave," Volkov said. "If the flag is up, the perimeter is already compromised." He cocked the gun. "You are a liability, Liam." I looked at Agent Miller. "Now," I said. Miller spoke into his headset. "One word. Execute." The living room window exploded inward. Glass showered across the room like diamonds. A canister of tear gas flew in hissing and spinning across the floor. White smoke billowed out instantly, filling the space. "FBI, drop the weapon." The shout came from everywhere at once. The front door was rammed open with a deafening crash. Tactical agents in heavy body armor poured into the hallway. Their rifles raised their laser sights, cutting through the smoke. Volkov spun around, raising his gun toward the door. "Do not do it," an agent screamed. Volkov hesitated. He was a professional. He knew the odds. He looked at the 3 rifles pointed at his chest. He looked at the tear gas clouding his vision. He dropped the gun. "Get down! Everybody down!" The room became a chaotic swirl of motion. Agents swarmed the buyers, forcing them to the ground and zip-tying their hands behind their backs. Mr. Green was curled into a ball under the table, sobbing. Jasmine was screaming a high-pitched wail of pure terror. And Liam. Liam was standing against the wall, his hands raised, his face a mask of shock. He was looking around wildly, trying to understand how his victory lap had turned into a war zone. He looked at the broken window. He looked at the men in armor. And then he saw me. I walked through the open front door. I was not wearing my work clothes. I was wearing a bespoke navy suit, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie. I walked past the agents who parted to let me through. The smoke swirled around my ankles. I stopped in the center of the room. I looked down at Volkov, who was being hauled to his feet. I looked at the briefcase of money on the table. Then I looked at Liam. He stared at me. He blinked, trying to clear the tear gas from his eyes. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. "Dad," he whispered. I walked up to him. I stopped 2 feet away. I was calm. I was steady. "Liam," I said, my voice cut through the noise of the room. You signed the papers," Liam stammered. "You are in the home." I raised my right hand. I held it up so he could see it clearly. I wiggled my fingers. "I am right-handed, Liam," I said. He stared at my hand. Then his eyes widened as the realization hit him like a freight train. "The signature," he breathed. "It was a forgery," I said. "And since I am the one who forged it, I knew exactly when to report it. I sent a copy of that document to the FBI 3 days ago. I told them you were forcing me to sign it under duress." Liam's knees buckled. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. "You set me up," he whispered. I leaned down close to his face. "I did not set you up, Liam. I just let you be yourself." An agent stepped forward and grabbed Liam by the arms. He hauled him up and slammed him against the wall. "Liam Sterling, you are under arrest for bank fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." The cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. The sound was the sweetest music I had ever heard. Liam looked at me one last time as they dragged him toward the door. "Help me," he begged. "Dad, please. Tell them it was a mistake." I looked at him. I looked at the man who destroyed my wife's photo, the man who hit my daughter, the man who tried to erase me. "I am not your dad," I said. "And this is not a mistake, it is an eviction." They dragged him out. I turned to look for Jasmine. She was sitting on the floor amidst the broken glass, her dress ruined, her face streaked with mascara and tears. She was looking up at me, her eyes filled with fear and confusion. "Daddy," she whispered. I looked at her. I felt a pang of sorrow, deep and aching. But I did not move to help her up. Not this time. She had made her choice in the dining room. Now she had to live with it. I turned to Agent Miller, who had just walked in. "Secure the scene," I said. "I will be in the car." I walked out of my house. The air outside was fresh and clean. The neighborhood was quiet, save for the flashing lights of the police cars. I got back into the back seat of the limousine. I watched as they brought Liam out and shoved him into the back of a squad car. It was done. The demolition was complete. Now all that was left was to clear the debris. The explosion of the bay window was not just a sound, it was a physical force that sucked the air out of the room. 1 second, the living room was a tense standoff between a desperate gambler and a Russian hitman, and the next, it was a kaleidoscope of shattering glass and blinding light. A canister skittered across the hardwood floor, hissing like a viper and spewing thick white smoke that instantly turned the afternoon into a choking gray fog. The shouting began before the glass even hit the floor. It came from everywhere at once, a wall of sound designed to disorient and terrify. "FBI, get down on the ground. Hands where we can see them. Drop the weapon." The front door did not just open. It disintegrated off its hinges as a battering ram slammed into it. I watched from the safety of the limousine as heavily armored tactical agents poured into the breach like a flood of black water. They moved with a terrifying efficiency. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. They were machines of justice, and they were dismantling the criminal enterprise in my living room with surgical precision. Inside the house, the chaos was absolute. Through the live feed on the tablet in my lap, I saw Volkov, the Russian professional, react with the speed of a man who had been here before. He dropped his gun immediately and raised his hands, knowing that any sudden movement would turn him into a colander. His bodyguards were not so smart. One of them tried to reach for a weapon inside his jacket and was immediately tackled by 3 agents who drove him into the floor with bone-crushing force. Liam was not a professional. He was a tourist in a war zone. He stood frozen against the wall, his mouth open in a silent scream, his eyes wide with a terror so profound it looked like madness. He did not drop to the floor. He did not raise his hands. He just stood there shaking as the world exploded around him. An agent screamed at him to get down, but Liam was paralyzed. Finally, an agent swept his legs out from under him, and he hit the floor hard, his face pressing into the same wood he had disrespected just days before. Jasmine was curled in a fetal ball under the card table, her hands over her ears, screaming a high, thin sound that cut through the shouting. Mr. Green, the corrupt notary, was trying to crawl under the sofa, sobbing and begging for mercy. The room was a swirl of smoke and laser sights. Red dots danced across the backs of the men on the floor. The air was thick with the smell of tear gas and fear. Flashbangs went off in the hallway, disorienting anyone who might have tried to run out the back. "Clear." One agent shouted, Clear, another echoed from the kitchen. Secure, bring in the containment team. The noise began to subside, replaced by the heavy breathing of the agents and the metallic click of handcuffs being tightened. I watched as they zip-tied Volkov's hands behind his back. The Russian did not struggle. He just stared at the floor, his face a mask of cold fury. He knew he had been set up. He knew someone had betrayed him. He looked at Liam, and if looks could kill, my son-in-law would have been dead right there on the floorboards. Liam was sobbing now. It was a pathetic, wet sound. He was babbling, pleading with the agents. Please, I am the owner. This is my house. I was just selling my house. It is a mistake. Agent Miller's voice came over my earpiece. Mr. Ross, the scene is secure. You are clear to enter. I took a deep breath. I adjusted my cuffs. I checked my tie in the rear-view mirror. I did not look like the man who had been thrown out of his own house 3 days ago. I looked like the man who owned the building. I opened the car door and stepped out onto the pavement. The air smelled of cordite and ozone. Neighbors were coming out onto their porches, staring at the spectacle. Police lights flashed blue and red, painting the street in a strobe of emergency. I walked up the driveway, my steps measured and calm. I walked past the crushed hydrangeas. I walked past the splintered remains of my front door. I stepped over the threshold and into the smoke. The living room was a wreck. Furniture was overturned. Glass crunched under the soles of my Italian leather shoes. The smoke was starting to clear, drifting out through the broken window in lazy tendrils. The agents parted for me. They knew who I was. They stood at attention as I walked into the center of the room. I stopped. I looked down. At my feet lay the men who had come to steal my legacy. Volkov looked up at me. His eyes narrowed. He recognized the look of a man in charge. He gave me a slight, almost respectful nod. He knew he had been outplayed. Then I looked at the corner. Liam was on his knees, his hands cuffed behind his back. An agent had a hand on his shoulder, keeping him down. His face was streaked with tears and snot. His expensive suit was covered in dust. He looked small. He looked broken. He looked up and saw me. He blinked, trying to clear the grit from his eyes. He shook his head as if he were seeing a ghost. "Dad," he whispered. His voice was a rasp of confusion. I did not answer immediately. I just stood there, towering over him. I let him take it in. I let him see the suit. I let him see the shoes. I let him see the cold, hard clarity in my eyes. "Liam," I said. My voice was low, but it cut through the room like a knife. He struggled against the agent's grip, trying to get to his knees. "Dad, tell them," he begged. "Tell them I have the power of attorney. Tell them you signed it. Tell them this is my house." I looked at the folding table where the open briefcase of money still sat. $1.5 million, the price of my life. I walked over to the table. I picked up the power of attorney document. It was stamped and signed. It was the piece of paper Liam thought was his salvation. I held it up. "You think this piece of paper makes you the owner?" I asked. "Yes," Liam cried. "You signed it. Jasmine saw you. You signed it right there at the table." I looked at the signature, the shaky, jagged letters written by a man pretending to be feeble. I walked back to Liam. I crouched down so I was eye level with him. The smell of his fear was pungent. "I need you to look at something, Liam," I said. I raised my right hand. I held it up in front of his face. I spread my fingers wide. I flexed them. They were strong, steady hands. The hands of an engineer. "Look at my hand, Liam," I commanded. He stared at it confused. "I am right-handed," I said slowly, enunciating every word. "I have been right-handed my entire life. I draft blueprints with my right hand. I hammer nails with my right hand. I eat my gumbo with my right hand." Liam's eyes widened. He stopped breathing for a second, but he stammered, "You signed—" "I signed that document with my left hand," I said. "I made sure it looked shaky. I made sure it looked like the signature of a man losing his faculties. Because I knew you would not be looking at my hand. I knew you would only be looking at the dollar signs." The realization hit him. I saw the color drain from his face, leaving him gray and ashen. "It is a forgery," I said. "And do you know how I know it is a forgery? Because I am the one who forged it. And 10 minutes after you left my house with that paper, I sent a digital copy of it to Agent Miller at the FBI. I filed an affidavit stating that I was signing it under duress and that it was invalid." Liam gasped. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. "You set me up," he wheezed. I stood up and brushed a speck of dust from my lapel. I did not set you up, Liam, I said coldly. I tested you. I gave you a choice. I sat at that table, and I gave you every opportunity to do the right thing. I gave you a chance to be a man. But you chose to be a thief. You chose to rob an old man because you thought he was weak. You are supposed to be senile, Liam stuttered. You are supposed to be in the home. I am not senile, I said. I am a structural engineer. I know how to spot a crack in the foundation. And you, Liam, are the biggest crack this family has ever seen. I turned to Agent Miller. This document is the evidence of wire fraud and bank fraud, I said, handing him the paper. He tried to use a known invalid instrument to facilitate a money laundering transaction. We have it recorded. Mr. Ross Miller said, pocketing the document. We have the bank attempt from yesterday, too. We have him on federal charges that will put him away until he is an old man himself. Liam began to struggle then. The reality of his future was crashing down on him. The Russian mob wanted him dead. The FBI wanted him in prison. He had nowhere to go. Dad, please, he screamed, thrashing against the cuffs. I am family. I am your son. You cannot let them take me. They will kill me in there. I looked down at him with zero pity. You are not my son, I said. My son would never treat a woman the way you treated my daughter. My son would never destroy my wife's picture. My son would never try to erase me. I nodded to the agents. Get him out of my house. 2 agents grabbed Liam under the arms and hauled him to his feet. He was dead weight. He was weeping openly now, snot running down his face, begging, pleading, calling out for Jasmine. Jasmine, tell him. Tell him we did it for him. I watched as they dragged him toward the door. He dug his heels into the floor trying to stay, but he was no match for the federal agents. They hauled him through the broken door frame and out into the harsh light of day. I listened to his screams fade as they shoved him into the back of a squad car. Good riddance, I whispered. I turned back to the room. The silence was returning. The smoke was gone. The only sound was the soft weeping of my daughter. Jasmine was still on the floor amidst the broken glass. She had not moved. She had not looked up when Liam called her name. She was staring at my shoes. She looked broken. Her floral dress was torn. Her hair was a mess. She looked like a child who had been lost in the woods for days. Daddy, she whispered. Her voice was so small I almost didn't hear it. I looked at her. My heart ached. This was my baby girl. The girl I had built this house for. The girl I had tried to protect from the world. But she was also the woman who had stood by while her husband threw me to the floor. She was the woman who had lied about the contract. She was the woman who had searched my safe hoping to find money to save herself. I took a step toward her. She flinched as if she expected me to hit her. That flinch hurt more than anything Liam had done. Get up, Jasmine, I said. My voice was not angry, but it was not warm. It was tired. She looked up at me, Her eyes were swollen. She reached out a hand toward me. Daddy, I am so sorry, she sobbed. I was scared. He said he would hurt me. He said, I know what he said, I interrupted her. I heard the tapes, Jasmine. I saw the videos. I know you were scared. Then you forgive me, she asked, hope blooming in her eyes. You will help me. I looked at her hand. I did not take it. I saved you, Jasmine, I said. He is gone. He is going to prison. You are safe now. The Russians cannot touch you. But I need you, she cried. I have nothing. He spent all our money. I have nowhere to go. I looked around the room. I looked at the walls I had painted. I looked at the floor I had laid. You made a choice, Jasmine, I said. When you sat at that dining table and read that contract, you made a choice. You chose him. You chose the lie. But I had to, she pleaded. No, I said firmly. You didn't. You could have told me. You could have whispered the truth. You could have blinked. You could have done anything to warn me, but you didn't. You helped him load the gun. I walked over to the window and looked out at the police cars. I am not pressing charges against you, Jasmine, I said. The FBI knows you were coerced. You are not going to prison. Thank you, she wept. Oh, thank you, Daddy. Can we stay here? Can we fix this? I turned back to her. "No," I said. She froze. "What? This house?" I said, looking at the high ceilings. "This house is tainted. I cannot live here anymore. Not after this. And neither can you." "What do you mean?" she asked. "I already transferred the deed," I said. "This morning. Before the raid. I donated the property." "Donated it," she whispered. "To who?" "To the Lucille Ross Scholarship Fund," I said. "It is a non-profit I set up in your mother's name. This house will be sold, and the proceeds will go to send underprivileged kids to engineering school. Kids who know the value of hard work. Kids who would never steal from their parents." Jasmine stared at me in shock. "You gave away my inheritance." "It was never your inheritance," I said. "It was my legacy. And you proved you could not carry it." "But where will I live?" she asked, her voice rising in panic. "I have no money. I have no job." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small white envelope. I walked over and placed it on the table next to the briefcase of cash that was being tagged as evidence. "In there is the contact information for a women's shelter downtown," I said. "They have a job placement program. They help victims of domestic abuse get back on their feet. And there is a prepaid debit card with $500 on it." $500, she gasped. "That won't even pay for a hotel." "It is enough for food and a few nights at a hostel," I said. "It is a start. It is more than I had when I started building this life." "Daddy, please," she begged, grabbing the hem of my pants. "Do not do this. I am your daughter." I looked down at her. I felt the tears pricking my eyes, but I did not let them fall. "You are an adult, Jasmine," I said, gently pulling my leg away. "And it is time you learned how to survive without a safety net. I love you enough to let you save yourself." I turned and walked toward the door. "Daddy, wait!" she screamed. "Do not leave me here." I stopped at the threshold. I looked back one last time. "The police will give you a ride to the shelter," I said. I walked out of the house and down the steps. The sun had finally broken through the clouds. It was bright and warm. I walked past the police cars, past the neighbors, past the wreckage of my past life. I got back into the limousine. "Where to?" Mr. Ross, the driver, asked. "The office," I said. "I have a scholarship fund to manage. And I think I want to buy a condo, something small, something with a view." The car pulled away. I did not look back. I had lost a house, and I had lost a daughter. But as I watched the city skyline approach, I realized I had regained something much more valuable. I had regained my dignity, and that was something no one could ever sell. The waiting room of Sarah Jenkins' law firm was quiet, a stark contrast to the violence and noise of the raid just 24 hours earlier. I sat in a high-back leather chair staring at the abstract painting on the wall. It was a chaotic mess of red and black lines, much like the last few days of my life. My hands were folded in my lap. They were steady. The trembling had stopped the moment I saw Liam in handcuffs. Now there was only a cold, heavy stone in my chest where my heart used to be. Sarah sat across from me, tapping a silver pen against her notepad. "She is here, Clinton," Sarah said softly. "The receptionist just buzzed her up." I nodded. "Send her in. I had arranged this meeting." I had posted her bail, not because I forgave her, but because I needed to look her in the eye one last time without the chaos of a crime scene around us. I needed to finish this properly. The heavy oak door opened. Jasmine walked in. She looked like a ghost of the woman she used to be. Her hair was matted and pulled back in a messy bun. She was wearing a gray tracksuit that looked 2 sizes too big. Her eyes were swollen, red-rimmed, and darting around the room like a trapped animal. She did not look at Sarah. She looked straight at me. "Daddy," she breathed. She crossed the room in 3 quick strides and threw herself at my feet. She grabbed my hands, burying her face in my palms. Her tears were hot and wet. "I am so sorry," she sobbed. "I am so sorry, Daddy. Please, you have to believe me. I did not know it would go that far. I was so scared. He made me do it." I looked down at the top of her head. I remembered braiding that hair when she was 6 years old. I remembered the smell of her baby shampoo. I felt a phantom ache in my arms, a longing to pull her up and tell her everything was going to be all right. To tell her that I would fix it just like I fixed her scraped knees and her broken toys. But I did not move. I let my hands lie limp in hers. "Get up, Jasmine," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of the warmth she was seeking. Sit in the chair. She looked up at me, confused by my lack of reaction. She sniffled and pulled herself up into the chair opposite me. She wiped her nose with her sleeve. I knew you would help us, she said, her voice taking on a desperate, hopeful tone. The public defender said the charges are serious. Conspiracy, fraud, money laundering. They set Liam's bail at $500,000. I stared at her. I waited. We do not have that kind of money, Daddy, she continued, the words tumbling out faster now. They seized our accounts. They took the cars. But you have the secret money, the money from the safe. Or the money from the sale. We just need to get him out. Once he is out, we can explain everything. We can get a good lawyer. We can fix this. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She was not here to apologize. She was not here to reconcile. She was here to make a withdrawal. She was asking me to use my money to bail out the man who had tried to put me in a nursing home and sell my house to the mafia. You want me to pay for Liam? I asked quietly. He is my husband, Jasmine pleaded. He made a mistake. He was desperate. The Russians were going to kill him. He did it for us, Daddy, to save our family. For us, I repeated. Yes, she said, nodding frantically. He loves me. He loves us. He just got in over his head. Please, Daddy, just write the check. Once he is out, we will go away. We will move to another state. You will never have to see us again if you do not want to. Just save him. I looked at Sarah. She was watching Jasmine with a look of pure clinical fascination, as if she were observing a new species of insect. Sarah, I said, play the tape. Sarah opened her laptop. She clicked a file. Jasmine frowned. What tape? The audio filled the room. It was crisp and clear, recorded by the high-fidelity microphone I had hidden in the centerpiece of the dining room table on the night of the gumbo dinner. The sound of silverware clinking against china. Liam's smooth fake voice. Read it to your dad so he feels comfortable. Then Jasmine's voice, trembling but clear. It says that the proceeds from the sale will be deposited directly into Clinton Ross's personal savings account for his exclusive use and benefit. I watched Jasmine's face as the recording played. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her ashen. She stopped breathing. Sarah stopped the recording. The silence that followed was heavier than the one before. I leaned forward. Clause 4, I said. Jasmine opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Clause 4 of the document Liam gave me stated clearly that the money would go to the Sterling Family Trust, I said. It stated that I was signing away my rights to manage my own funds. It was a theft, Jasmine. Plain and simple. But, she stammered, I asked you to read it. I continued, my voice rising just a fraction. I gave you an out. I looked you in the eye and I asked you to tell me the truth. I trusted you to be my eyes because I pretended mine were failing. And what did you do? You lied, I said. You looked at the paper. You saw that he was stealing from me. You saw that he was funneling $2 million into his own pocket, leaving me destitute. And you looked me in the face and you lied. You told me the money was safe. She started to cry again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the frantic weeping of a victim, it was the shameful sobbing of a caught criminal. I had to, she whispered. He was watching me. He is not watching you now, I said. He is in a cell. And you are here asking me to pay to get him out. I stood up. I could not sit anymore. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. I forgave a lot of things, Jasmine, I said. I forgave the fact that you stopped calling. I forgave the fact that you treated me like a burden. I even forgave the fact that you stood by and watched him throw me on the floor. I told myself you were scared. I told myself he was physically intimidating you. I turned back to face her. But that lie at the dinner table, that was not fear. That was a choice. You calculated the odds. You decided that his survival was worth my destruction. You decided that my life, my 40 years of hard work, my legacy was a fair price to pay to keep your husband out of trouble. Daddy, please, she wailed. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to call on a birthday, I said. A mistake is crashing a car. Signing off on the robbery of your father is not a mistake. It is a betrayal. It is a character flaw that I cannot fix. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. Jasmine's eyes lit up for a second. She thought I was breaking. She thought the tears worked. I tore a check out. I did not write anything on it. I crumpled it up in my fist and dropped it on the floor. You want money for bail? I asked. Go ask the Russians. I am closed. Jasmine stared at the ball of paper on the floor. The realization hit her. I wasn't going to save him. And if I wasn't going to save him, I wasn't going to save her. Sarah cleared her throat. Mrs. Sterling. Sarah said, using her married name deliberately. There is one more matter we need to discuss. The house. Jasmine looked at Sarah. What about the house? It is gone, I said. What do you mean gone? She asked. I transferred the deed yesterday morning, I said. Before the raid, before the arrest. The house at 1982 Highview Avenue no longer belongs to Clinton Ross. It is now the property of the Lucille Ross Scholarship Fund. Jasmine blinked. You gave it away. I donated it, I corrected her, to a charity that helps young engineers from disadvantaged backgrounds. Kids who know what it means to build something, not steal it. The board of directors has already listed the property for sale. The proceeds will fund tuition for 20 students over the next decade. But that is my inheritance, Jasmine gasped. That is my home. It was your home, I said, until you tried to sell it to a money launderer. Now it is just a building, and you are trespassing. Sarah slid a piece of paper across the desk. This is a formal eviction notice, Sarah said. Since the property has changed ownership and you are not on the deed or a leaseholder, you have 24 hours to vacate the premises. You can remove your personal effects clothing and toiletries only. Furniture, appliances, and fixtures remain with the property. 24 hours, Jasmine shrieked. Where am I supposed to go? Our house is foreclosed. Liam is in jail. I have no money. I looked at her. I felt a wave of exhaustion crash over me. You are 30 years old, Jasmine, I said. You have a college degree that I paid for. You have 2 hands and 2 feet. You figure it out. Figure it out, she screamed, standing up. How can you be so cruel? I am your daughter, and I am your father, I shouted back, my voice finally breaking the calm surface. I am the man who held you when you were sick. I am the man who paid for your wedding. I am the man you tried to declare insane. Did you think about where I would go? Did you care if I rotted in sunny meadows? Did you care if I died alone in a room that smelled of urine? She recoiled as if I had slapped her. No, I said, lowering my voice. You didn't care? You only cared about the money. Well, now the money is gone. And so am I. I turned my back to her. Sarah, show her out, Daddy Jasmine whispered. Do not call me that, I said without turning around. My daughter died the moment she signed that witness line. You are just a stranger who looks like her. I heard Sarah stand up. I heard her firm footsteps crossing the room. This way, Mrs. Sterling, Sarah said. I heard Jasmine sobbing. I heard the scuff of her shoes on the carpet. She lingered at the door, waiting for me to turn, waiting for the last-minute reprieve. It never came. The door closed with a heavy, final click. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my lungs for a week. My legs felt weak. I sat down on the windowsill and looked out at the city. It was done. I had cut the cord. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, harder than burying my wife, harder than any job site injury. But it was necessary. Sometimes you have to amputate a limb to save the body. Sarah walked back into the room. She stood beside me. Are you okay, Clinton? She asked. No, I said honestly. I am not okay, but I will be. She nodded. What now? She asked. Now we finish it, I said. Liam goes to trial, Jasmine learns to live in the real world, and I start over. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I have a scholarship fund to run, I said, and I have a lunch reservation. Alone, Sarah asked. No, I said, with myself. And that is better company than I have had in a long time. I walked out of the office. I did not look back at the empty chair where Jasmine had sat. That chapter was closed. The book was not finished, but that page was turned. I walked to the elevator, my head held high. I was Clinton Ross. I was a builder, and I was going to build something new on the ashes of the old. The trial of Liam Sterling was not the media sensation he probably hoped it would be. It was a cold, administrative dismantling of a man who thought he was smarter than the system. I sat in the back row of the federal courtroom every single day. I wore my best suit. I sat with my back straight and my hands folded on my knees. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to know that the old man he tried to erase was the last thing he would see before they locked him away. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the forged documents, the forensic trail of money laundering, the testimony of the notary who turned state's evidence to save his own skin. Liam's high-priced defense team crumbled under the weight of the facts. In the end, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts: bank fraud, wire fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit money laundering. When the judge read the sentence, the courtroom was silent. 15 years in a federal penitentiary, no parole eligibility for at least 12. Liam did not cry this time. He just slumped in his chair like a marionette whose strings had been cut. The arrogance was gone. The charm was gone. All that was left was a terrified man realizing his life was over. But the real sentence was not delivered by the judge. As the marshals hauled Liam up to take him away, he turned to look at the gallery one last time. He was looking for someone to save him. Maybe he thought Jasmine would be there. She was not. Instead, his eyes locked with a man sitting 2 rows behind me. He was a thick-set man with a shaved head and a scar running through his eyebrow. He was wearing a cheap suit that did not hide the prison tattoos on his neck. He was an associate of Volkov. He was there to send a message. I saw the man smile. It was a small, tight smile. He raised 2 fingers to his brow in a mock salute and then drew his thumb across his throat. Liam screamed. It was a sound of pure, primal terror. He tried to pull away from the marshals. He begged the judge for protective custody. He yelled that they were going to kill him. The marshals dragged him out, kicking and screaming. The door slammed shut behind him, cutting off his wails. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I looked at the man with the scar. He looked at me. He nodded once, respectful of the game, and then walked out. Liam was going to a place where debts are collected in blood. He had borrowed money he could not pay back, and now he was going into a cage with the people he owed. 15 years was a long time to look over your shoulder. It was a long time to sleep with one eye open. I walked out of the courthouse and into the fresh air. I felt lighter than I had in years. The parasite was removed. The host could finally begin to heal. While Liam was learning the harsh reality of federal prison, my daughter Jasmine was getting a crash course in the real world. She was not in jail, but she was in a prison of her own making. The eviction from my house had been swift. The foreclosure on her own home followed days later. The cars were repossessed. Her credit score cratered. She was toxic. No landlord wanted to rent to a woman whose husband was a convicted fraudster. No respectable company wanted to hire her. I did not have to guess what happened to her. I had Sarah hire a private investigator to keep tabs on her. Not to help her, but to ensure she stayed away from my accounts and to see if she would sink or swim. The reports were grim but necessary. Jasmine had moved into a studio apartment in the worst part of town. It was a basement unit with bars on the windows and a radiator that rattled all night. The report said she slept on a mattress on the floor because she had sold her furniture to pay for Liam's legal fees before he was convicted. She got a job, not as an interior designer or a consultant. She got a job at a diner on the interstate, the kind of place where truckers stop for coffee at 3 in the morning, the kind of place where the waitress is on her feet for 10 hours straight and smells like grease and onions when she goes home. I drove by the diner one night just to see. I parked my truck across the street and watched through the window. I saw my daughter wearing a stained apron pouring coffee for a man who didn't even look at her. I saw her wiping tables, scrubbing dried ketchup off the laminate. I saw her counting her tips at the end of the shift, her lips moving as she calculated if she had enough for rent. She looked tired. She looked 10 years older. Her hands, once manicured and soft, were red and chapped. She was not the princess in the floral dress anymore. She was a worker. I watched her walk out of the diner and head toward the bus stop. It was raining. She pulled her thin coat tighter around herself. She looked cold. A part of me wanted to drive over there and pick her up. A part of me wanted to write her a check and make it all go away. But I stayed in my truck. Pain is a teacher, I whispered to myself. If I saved her now, she would never learn. She would go back to finding another Liam, another shortcut. She needed to know what it felt like to earn $1. She needed to know the value of a roof over her head. She needed to understand that the lifestyle she felt entitled to was a privilege, not a right. She was paying off the debts she had signed her name to, the credit cards, the loans. For the first time in her life, she was taking responsibility. It was ugly and it was hard, but it was honest. I put the truck in gear and drove away. I left her in the rain. It was the most loving thing I could do. 6 months later, on a Tuesday afternoon, I was leaving the headquarters of the Lucille Ross Scholarship Fund. We had just awarded our first round of grants. 20 bright young kids from the neighborhood were going to college. I felt good. I felt purposeful. I walked out of the building and saw her. Jasmine was standing by the entrance. She was waiting for me. She looked better than she had at the diner, but she still looked worn. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was clean but unstyled. She was holding a cheap coffee cup with both hands, as if for warmth. She saw me and straightened up. She looked nervous. "Hello, Clinton," she said. She didn't call me Daddy. She didn't call me Dad. She called me Clinton. It was a small acknowledgement of the distance between us. "Hello, Jasmine," I said. I stopped, but I did not smile. "I heard about the scholarship fund," she said. "I saw it on the news. It is a good thing you are doing." Mom would have been proud. I nodded. She would have. There was an awkward silence. Passers-by walked around us, flowing like water around a stone. "I am working," she said, "at a diner, and I am taking night classes, paralegal studies." "That is good," I said. "Honest work." "It is hard," she admitted. "I am tired all the time. My feet hurt. My back hurts. And the debt, it never seems to go down. The interest eats everything I make." I waited. I knew the ask was coming. "I need help, Clinton," she said. Her voice didn't waver this time. She wasn't begging. She was stating a fact. "I am drowning. My rent went up. I have a tuition payment due. I just need a little breathing room. Just a loan. I will pay you back. I swear. I am working. You can garnish my wages if you want." I looked at her. I saw the desperation, but I also saw something else. I saw a spark of resilience. She hadn't given up. She hadn't found another man to pay her bills. She was trying. But she was still looking for a shortcut. She still thought I was the bank. I reached into my briefcase. Jasmine watched my hand. I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. I pulled out a thick envelope. She reached for it. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you." I handed it to her. She tore it open. She expected a check. She expected cash. Instead, she pulled out a paperback book. It was a copy of The Richest Man in Babylon, a classic book on financial discipline and wealth building. She frowned. "A book? Look inside the cover," I said. She opened the book. Tucked inside the front cover was a single crisp $100 bill. "What is this?" she asked, looking up at me with confusion and disappointment. "That $100 is for groceries," I said. "Buy yourself some good food, vegetables, protein. You look thin." "And the book?" she asked, holding it up like it was a joke. "The book is the loan," I said. "That book taught me how to build a fortune from nothing. It taught me that a part of all I earn is mine to keep. It taught me that gold slips away from the man who invests it in businesses or purposes with which he is not familiar." I stepped closer to her. "You do not need my money, Jasmine. If I give you money, you will just pay a bill and be back here next month. You need to change how you think. You need to understand that wealth is not what you spend, it is what you keep. Read the book. Apply it." "But this won't pay my rent," she said, her voice rising. "No," I agreed. "Your work pays your rent. That book tells you how to make sure you never have to worry about rent again." I closed my briefcase. "I am not your safety net anymore, Jasmine," I said. "I am just a man, you know. If you want to talk about the book after you read it, call my secretary and make an appointment. But do not come here asking for handouts." I walked past her. "Clinton, wait," she called out. I stopped and turned. "Is that it?" she asked. "Is that all I get?" I looked at the woman who had tried to sell my home to criminals. I looked at the daughter who had lied to my face. "You got $100 in the secret to wealth," I said. "That is a lot more than Liam got." I turned and walked to my car. I watched her in the rearview mirror as I drove away. She was standing on the sidewalk holding the book and the bill. She looked angry, she looked disappointed, but she put the money in her pocket, and she put the book in her bag. She didn't throw it away. That was progress. I drove toward my condo. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I was alone. My house was gone. My family was shattered. But I was free. I had protected my legacy. I had served justice. And I had planted a seed. Whether that seed would grow in the rocky soil of Jasmine's life was up to her. I had done my job, I was retired, and for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to tomorrow. The applause sounded like rain on a tin roof. It was a clean, honest sound. I stood on the stage of the university auditorium, the stage lights blinding me just enough to hide the moisture in my eyes. 1 year had passed since the FBI raided my home. 1 year since I watched my son-in-law dragged away in handcuffs. 1 year since I evicted my daughter from my life. I looked out at the sea of faces. There were 500 people in the room. Faculty members, local politicians, and engineering students. They were not looking at a senile old man. They were not looking at a mark to be grifted. They were looking at Clinton Ross, the founder of the Lucille Ross Scholarship Fund. The Dean of Engineering. A woman with a firm handshake and a no-nonsense attitude stepped up to the microphone. "It is my honor," she said, her voice echoing through the hall, "to present the Community Pillar Award to a man who has turned personal success into public opportunity. Through his generosity, 20 students from underrepresented communities are starting their engineering degrees this fall, fully funded. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Clinton Ross." I walked to the podium. My legs were strong. I did not need a cane. I did not need assistance. I wore my best suit, the charcoal one Lucille had picked out for me years ago. I placed my hands on the lectern. They were the hands of a worker, calloused and scarred but steady. "Thank you," I said. My voice was deep and resonant. I did not prepare a speech. I did not need one. I looked at the front row where the 20 scholarship recipients sat. They were young. They looked nervous. Some of them wore suits that did not quite fit, probably bought at a thrift store just for tonight. I recognized that look. I recognized the hunger in their eyes, the desire to build something, the fear that they did not belong. "I was once sitting where you are," I said, speaking directly to them. "I was told that I did not belong on a construction site. I was told that I should be grateful just to carry the tools. But I learned something. I learned that the integrity of a structure does not depend on the paint on the walls or the address on the street. It depends on the foundation." I paused. The room was silent. "You are the foundation." I continued. "Your character, your work ethic, your honesty. That is what holds the world up. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, and do not let anyone try to sell your foundation out from under you. Not for money, not for convenience, not even for family." The applause that followed was deafening. It was not polite applause. It was real. It vibrated in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt full. The hole that Jasmine and Liam had carved out of me was beginning to heal. It wasn't filled with regret anymore. It was filled with purpose. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the lobby. Waiters passed around hors d'oeuvres. People came up to shake my hand. They asked about my career. They asked about my wife. They treated me with a deference that had nothing to do with my bank account and everything to do with my actions. A young man approached me. He was tall and lanky with glasses sliding down his nose. His name tag read, "Marcus Williams Scholarship Recipient." He was holding a plate of food, but he wasn't eating. He was looking at me with an intensity that reminded me of myself at 20. "Mr. Ross," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "I just wanted to say thank you. My mom, she works 2 jobs. She works 2. We didn't know how we were going to pay for tuition. When I got the letter, I thought it was a mistake." "It was no mistake, Marcus," I said, shaking his hand. "You earned it. I read your application essay. You talked about wanting to build bridges that connect communities. That is good work." "I promise I won't let you down," Marcus said. "I am going to work harder than anyone else." "I know you will," I said. "And Marcus, remember something. Money is a tool. It is like a hammer. You can use it to build a house or you can use it to break a window. Make sure you use it to build." He nodded solemnly. "I will, sir." I watched him walk away back to his proud mother who was beaming from the corner of the room. I felt a warmth spread through me. This was it. This was the family I had chosen. I didn't share blood with these kids. I didn't raise them. But we shared values. We shared a respect for the work. I realized then that Liam and Jasmine had tried to steal my legacy, but they had failed. They thought legacy was a house and a bank account. They didn't understand that legacy is what you leave in people, not what you leave in a will. I had not lost my legacy. I had just redistributed it to people who deserved it. The reception wound down around 9:00. The dean walked me to the door. "You seem happy, Clinton," she said. "I am," I replied. "I am very happy." I walked out into the cool night air. My valet brought my car around. It was a sensible sedan, reliable and understated. I tipped him well and got in. I did not drive back to my condo immediately. I felt a pull, a magnetic draw to the past. I wanted to close the circle. I drove through the city streets watching the lights blur past. I drove out toward the suburbs, toward the tree-lined streets where I had spent 40 years of my life. I turned onto Highview Avenue. The neighborhood was quiet. The streetlights cast long shadows on the lawns. I slowed down as I approached number 1982. The house was still there, my Victorian lady, but she looked different now. The crushed azaleas had been replanted. The front door had been repaired and painted a welcoming deep blue. There was a small, tasteful sign on the lawn that read, "The Lucille Ross Foundation." I pulled over to the curb and killed the engine. I rolled down the window and listened. The house was not dark. The lights were on downstairs. I could see movement through the windows. It was not a party. It was not a crime scene. Inside, I saw desks. I saw computers. I saw people working late. This was the headquarters for the scholarship fund. The living room where Liam had tried to sell my life was now a conference room where decisions were made to change lives. The dining room where Jasmine had lied to me was now a workspace where applications were reviewed. The house was alive. It had a purpose. It wasn't a mausoleum of my memories anymore. It was a factory of hope. I sat there for a long time just watching. I remembered the day I carried Lucille across the threshold. I remembered the day we brought Jasmine home from the hospital. I remembered the laughter and the arguments and the quiet Sundays. Those memories were still there. Liam couldn't take them. He couldn't sell them. They were mine. I looked up at the sky. It was a clear night. The stars were bright, hanging over the roof like diamonds. "Lucille," I whispered into the darkness. "I did it. I kept the house safe. It belongs to the good guys now." I felt a breeze rustle through the trees. It felt like a caress. I knew she would approve. She never cared about money. She cared about people. She would have loved seeing her home used to help kids like Marcus. "And Jasmine," I whispered. "I taught her the hardest lesson of all. I hope she learns it, Lucy. I hope she finds her way. But I cannot carry her anymore." I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was not a tear of grief. It was a tear of release. I had let go of the burden of saving everyone. I had learned that I mattered too. I looked at my hands resting on the steering wheel. They were old hands, spotted with age, scarred from work. But they were free. I had almost let them convince me that I was done, that I was a piece of furniture to be moved aside, that my value was only in what I could provide for others. But tonight, standing on that stage, I knew the truth. My value was in my resilience. My value was in my integrity. My value was in my ability to stand up when everyone expected me to fall down. I put the car in gear. I took one last look at the house. "Goodbye, old girl," I said. "You are in good hands." I drove away. I drove back toward the city, toward my condo, with the view toward my new life. I have a meeting tomorrow with the board. We are planning to expand the program. I have a lunch date with Sarah Jenkins, and next week I am going fishing. Just me and the quiet. My name is Clinton Ross. I am 69 years old. I have lost a lot, but I have kept what matters. If you are listening to this and you feel like you are being pushed aside, like you are being underestimated because of your age or your kindness or your silence, listen to me. Do not let them write your story. Do not sign the paper. Do not get in the van. You are the architect of your own life. You built the foundation, and you have the right to defend it. Stand your ground. Watch the details. And when they come for you, make sure you are ready to show them exactly who you are. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. And remember, the strongest lock on your property is your own self-worth. Good night. I learned that the strongest structures are not made of steel or concrete, but of self-respect. For years, I confused providing for my family with protecting them from reality. But true love is not shielding someone from consequences. It is letting them face the storm so they can learn to stand on their own. Family is not defined by blood, but by loyalty and mutual respect. If you find yourself in a house built on lies, do not be afraid to tear it down. Rebuilding is painful, but living in a ruin is worse. Your dignity is the one asset no one can appraise but you. If you have ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing your ground.